Hello, hello. Thank you everyone for joining. Welcome to episode 2 of Normal America. I'm your host, Rob Knorr. You get the pun? I'm very much a pun it type guy. Let me make sure this is muted there so it's not coming through the mic. Thank you all for being here. I'm not going to be talking much about the Virginia stuff today. I feel like I covered that the past couple days, so let's move on to exciting, fresh, new topics that we've never heard of, like impeachment. Oh, wait, that's been going on for the entire term of Trump's presidency. But oh well, I guess we'll talk about it today. We'll try to have a little fun, get some other stuff too, a couple more fun topics to get to at the end. So let's talk about impeachment. So I was talking to my friend John here before the video started. He is not feeling well, apparently, and watched a lot of the impeachment stuff today. I would contend that those two could be directly related, that watching the impeachment stuff could actually make you physically ill. So I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't watch a lot of it. I watched snippets. I'm thinking about, we'll see how this live stream goes and how my internet connection's doing, but I'm thinking about, in real time, watching Adam Schiff's opening statement. I haven't seen it, and then giving my reactions to it. We'll see if that goes or not. But I know what went on, and I did listen to some of it, so just the cliff notes if you didn't watch the hours upon hours upon hours of the impeachment hearings today, which are still going on at this time. Here's basically a synopsis. This day was all about setting up the rules for what's going to happen in the rest of the impeachment hearing. So basically what happened was you had the Democrats and Schumer keep putting amendments up that were like, well, we want this amendment that allows for us to basically have more witnesses or have more time. And each time those were tabled, which tabled means quickly dismissed, basically. It's a technical term. And they were tabled on purely partisan lines. So the votes, every single vote today, there was at least 3 of them that I saw going 53 to 47. That meant every Republican voted basically against Schumer's proposals. Every Democrat voted for. This is purely a partisan spectacle. Today had nothing, unless you're the nerdiest person imaginable that's really involved in kind of the technicalities of what goes on at hearings like this. There wasn't much in there for anyone today. It certainly didn't move the needle on anyone who was maybe on the fence about impeachment or not. But in fairness, it wasn't intended to do that. So, I mean, I am someone who's followed this impeachment very close. I live stream, 6-7 hours at a time during the House impeachment hearing with like Yovanovitch, with Fiona Hill, and some of the other witnesses. Even I wasn't interested in this, so that shows you how lame it was today. Let's see. Oh, sorry, Cindy, you can't stick around. That's okay. Thanks for poking in. So, yeah, that's kind of the cliff notes of what went on. It wasn't something that seemed to be all that important. Now, what is worth talking about, though, behind this is kind of the broader impeachment story in general, which we'll get to and you've heard me talk about before, but I think I have some new stuff that I want to add, particularly about the Senate trial, and also the media reactions to this and the reactions from kind of the establishment class, because they think that like today was like a huge victory, that it shows how corrupt the Republicans are, how noble the Democrats are, and that's just not true. Nothing happened. This wasn't even, I think even if you were a Democrat in the Senate that wanted Trump impeached and removed, I think you would admit, like, look, this wasn't necessarily for the general audience of the average voter. This is more trying to convince some Republican senators, hey, we should change these rules. We should give the Democrats more leeway. So they're trying, like, the establishment hacks, like Susan Collins, like Mitt Romney, they're trying to get them on board with the Democrats, which they probably will go, even if not publicly, behind the scenes. I'm sure establishment Mitt's pushing to kind of throw Trump under the bus as always. No doubt. That's one of the things I have no shame talking about on my channel. That's what it's about, like being normal Americans. I don't think we're establishment. I don't give two hoots about criticizing establishment Republican people at all. Mitt Romney's certainly one of them. I'll call him out. He always has been. I was dubious of him when he ran in 2012. I was a Ron Paul man. I knew that the establishment was trying to keep Ron Paul out, even on the conservative side. So, yeah, no surprise at all that he would be someone pushing for that. So, let's talk a little about then. So, I kind of have an order that I wanted to go. So the first thing I want to do is talk about the process. The argument that the Democrats and the media are making is that this is somehow a corrupt process from the Republicans in the Senate, and that proves that Trump must be guilty. And they use this line to you all the time. And by the way, it's a line that you now see the establishment left using. It was the same sort of rhetoric that was used by the neocons to pass the Patriot Act. So it's ironic. Again, everyone says, I have friends all across the political spectrum. I have friends that tell me all the time, oh, you've changed, Rob. You know, you were with me against the Iraq war, but now all of a sudden you're supporting Donald Trump, and somehow I'm a terrible person because of that. Well, I don't feel I've changed at all. I'm still skeptical of intel agencies and things like that. But here's another example. All of the people on the left, not all, but a lot of people on the left that were, in my opinion, correctly upset about the Patriot Act, and they were upset that this argument was made. Well, if you have nothing to hide, then who cares, you know? Only people that have something to hide are worried about the government looking in on their privacy. That's the argument. That's the same argument now. Those people were against it. These people on the left were against it. Now they're totally for it. Oh, well, if Trump's not willing to release everything to have everyone testify, then clearly he has something to hide and he's guilty. Meanwhile, they make that argument at the exact same time that they'll fight tooth and nail to make sure that Joe Biden or Hunter Biden or Viktor Shokin or Leshchenko or Serhiy Leshchenko or any of the witnesses that could actually speak to the corruption of the Bidens and the Obama administration to make sure that they don't testify. They say, oh no, that's just political gamesmanship. So if they don't get everything they want, that's hiding. That's, not being transparent. Now, let's look at what specifically that means. There are 2 articles of impeachment that Trump was impeached on. The first was abuse of power. That means nothing. And I'll get to that one more specifically in a minute. But the one I want to focus on right now, so 50% of the impeachment against Trump is about, quote, obstruction of Congress. Now, if you've been paying attention, you might say, wait a minute, obstruction of Congress? What does that mean? I've heard obstruction of justice. Yeah, exactly. It's a made-up crime. That's what it is. Obstruction of justice, the reason that they're accusing him of that is a bunch of were subpoenaed that are connected to Trump, and Trump fought those subpoenas in court. This occurs all the time. For example, we saw Obama administration with Eric Holder. They used executive privilege to make sure that Eric Holder's communications with Obama weren't released to the Congress. They fought that out in courts. There are many instances of administration after administration fighting subpoenas in courts. The intent was, from the founding fathers, that we would have 3 co-equal branches of government. You would have the legislator that wrote the laws. You had the executive, which would be the president and his agencies, that enforce the laws. And then you have the judicial, or the courts, and they interpret the laws. Anytime 2 of those co-equal branches of government clash, the 3rd branch is supposed to have the authority to weigh in. And so, when you have Congress saying, we have power over the executive and we demand to get subpoenas to all this information, and the executive branch saying, no, we have executive privilege that we don't have to show you that, these conversations don't have to be shown to Congress, then the courts weigh in. That's not uncommon at all. And it not only is it not uncommon, it legitimately makes sense. Even if you're someone who's distrusting of the government, you would be like, yeah, you don't want one branch to be all powerful. You don't want either the executive or Congress to have the power to say, everything we say goes, the other branch is beneath us, we're allowed to get everything from them we want, and they're not allowed to go to the courts to see if that's correct or not. Yeah, John, I think that Cipolo did a good job today, at least. Did I read the leaked DOD emails? No, I haven't read all of them yet. But yeah, I did see that they leaked uncensored emails. I'm sure it came from Adam Schiff's office, as always. And that's another thing. Like, when we're talking about this idea of, oh, well, Trump must be guilty if he's hiding things, there has been no more transparent president than Trump. Even on this situation. Show me one other time that we got private phone calls from Trump and another world leader. Or, I'm sorry, from the president and another world leader. Released to the public. Even the Mueller report. Barr, as the head of the DOJ, the Attorney General, was well within his rights. See, Mueller wasn't writing a report for the public. Mueller was writing a report for the head, the Attorney General, the head of the DOJ. Barr could have got that report, said there were no crimes, that's it, and the public wouldn't have had access to it. But instead, they allowed the public to see it with almost no redactions. The same's true of the transcript of the phone call. But they always want more. Trump could release everything and they'd be like, well, we want more. We want more. Imagine what we would learn if we got to hear the phone calls of, say, Barack Obama with the leader of Iran before he was sending pallets of cash in the middle of the night to them. That his Secretary of State, John Kerry, admitted would get into the hands of terrorists, some of it. Imagine what those phone calls would have sounded like. Yet no one called for them to be released. Imagine what the phone calls... We know that the FBI under the Obama administration acted in a corrupt manner never before seen in this country, in the biggest political scandal in the history of this country, and spied on Donald Trump's candidacy and his presidency based on unverified, Kremlin-sourced opposition research that was paid for by Trump's opponents. We know that happened. In the course of that, they contacted foreign governments. They contacted the government of Italy. They contacted the government of the UK. They contacted the government of Australia. 3 senators contacted the Ukrainian government and wrote a letter that was as strongly worded as Trump's phone call suggesting, hey, we've helped you out. You better help Robert Mueller or we would be upset. Demanding cooperation and evidence of possible crimes that Trump committed or people around him. Yet no impeachment, no investigation. So the idea that this is somehow obstruction of Congress is absurd. It's absurd. There is no such crime, and this is done over and over. If this is allowed to go forth, in addition to just this, and here's the end, spoiler alert, all this is the Democrats trying to criminalize investigations into their corruption. And not just the Democrats, the establishment in the first place. And they've done this over and over through Trump's presidency. Remember when all the media was telling you, not only will they not look at whether or not the FBI acted corruptly, but if you as an American have questions about the FBI, you're hurting law enforcement. You're hurting the country. You're demanding sources and methods be revealed that could put lives in jeopardy. That's what the media told us. Now we know that they were wrong and they covered up for one of the biggest, I would say, the biggest political scandal in the history of our country. Remember, if it was a scandal that a couple of bumbling fools went into the Watergate Hotel to try to get information on Nixon's opponent, what do you call it with, instead of a couple bumbling fools, you use the entirety of the FBI in our relationship with foreign governments? That's exponentially worse than what happened at Watergate. Yet the media doesn't care. They covered for it. They're not covering the story now. And the Republicans are so oafish and stupid that they're on the defensive about impeachment instead of saying, are you kidding me? Even if we concede everything they say about Trump, that's 1/10,000th of what the Democrats under the Obama administration and the establishment and the intel community did to Trump. Who do you think could affect our election more in, let's say, 2020? Ukraine? The Ukrainian government? Trump asking the Ukrainian government for help? Or the FBI? I know which one has more power to influence our election. In fact, you could take the Ukrainian government, the North Korean government, the Russian government, the Chinese government, the UK government, the German government, the French government, Australians, and combine them all together, and they still don't have the ability to influence our election as much as a corrupt FBI. Not even close. They don't have the authority to spy on people in this country. They wouldn't have allies in the Obama administration unmasking that information. They wouldn't have allies in the media they could leak that information to smear someone. So everything, as always, that they're accusing Trump of doing, they've done worse. So that's the obstruction of Congress. It's totally legitimate or illegitimate. So even if you hate Trump, understand the precedent this is setting is no president ever from here on out, any Congress, let's say, insert your president, Bernie Sanders wins, okay? But then maybe the Democrats lose the House in 2022. And the Republicans just say, yeah, we're going to subpoena everyone connected to Bernie Sanders, and you're going to release all of this information, all of your classified documents. And if you try to take it to the courts, that's impeachable. That's ridiculous. That's the precedent they're setting. Remember, even if you hate Trump, if you're one of my friends out there that hate Trump, remember, you should always, before you cheer for some kind of government corruption or this power to do things like this, imagine what happens if the other side gets in power. And the reality is, it's not a left-right issue. It's an establishment versus non-establishment issue. The establishment knows they'll always be the establishment, so they have no problem abusing this power. You think Mitt Romney cares? But he's a Republican. Surely he'll benefit Donald Trump. He'll stick up for Trump. Yeah, right. They don't care. They have a vested interest. They would have rather had Hillary Clinton in the first place. The whole, oh, she's the biggest threat to our country routine that these establishment Republicans played was garbage. The reality is they don't want any outsiders. They don't want a third party. They don't want anyone within the two parties that's perceived as a potential outsider. That's why they screwed Bernie in the primary in 2016. That's why they're continuing to screw Trump now. Now, Bernie's done his damnedest to show that he's a company man. He took that second lake house. He keeps pushing for the intel communities and their coup against Trump. He's trying to show them. Did you see him bowing down to Biden today? I'm so sorry, Biden. I'm sorry that one of my staffers correctly called you out for working for the credit card companies. Oh, what a hero. What a strong guy that Bernie Sanders is. That's what the obstruction of Congress stuff's about. Let's go to the first, abuse of power. So, again, let me first start by saying, let's assume you're in the chat here and you don't like Trump, right? Let's assume that you're someone like me. I was against, for example, foreign regime change wars. So let's say you're an old school, Democrat that I used to know from back in the day that you're like, Bush lied, people died, the Iraq war sucked, we're tired of the Libya situation, whatever. What Obama did in Libya, of course, not many Democrats had the nerve to say that. But let's say that's your take. Explain to me if you're someone who truly is upset about the establishment and about foreign regime change wars or bailing out bankers or other corruption that our intel agencies engage in. You mean to tell me that instead of ever prosecuting a president for abuse of power that did things like Obama that refused to enforce laws that Congress passed, such as laws against illegal immigration, Obama who droned an American citizen, Obama's wars in Libya, Bush's wars that maybe you thought were corrupt, Bill Clinton's conflicts that he spread around the world, the H.W. Bush, all of this stuff that we could look at, all the shady stuff that happened under their administrations, none of that rose to the level of abuse of power, according to these establishment Democrats. None of it. But if you ask a president from another country, hey, can you investigate this possible corruption? All of a sudden, that's abuse of power that's beyond the pale. Do you see what they're setting up here? They can flout the Constitution anytime they want. They can kill American citizens with drones without a trial. They could overthrow the government of Libya. They could take your tax dollars and bail out bankers. None of that's considered an abuse of power. Constantly we see, and I'm talking everywhere in government, the insanity of them wasting our money, of pushing disastrous wars, of bailing out rich people, of not caring about us normal Americans. And none of that rises to abuse of power. But if you talk to a leader of a foreign country and say, hey, what's the deal with what this past administration did? That's too much all of a sudden. Now, if you're Obama and you contact the UK government and you have your FBI being corrupt, admitting we have insurance policies to make sure that Trump doesn't win, and they're spying on Trump and wiretapping him based on Kremlin-sourced, unverified opposition research, that's perfectly fine for Obama and his administration to be talking to the world saying, give us evidence on Trump. No problem. No one says a word. If you have 3 Democratic senators that write a letter to the Ukraine and the new President Zelensky and say, hey, we heard rumors you're going to stop giving us evidence about Donald Trump. Don't do that. That'll jeopardize our relationship. That's perfectly fine. They say that's totally reasonable. No problem whatsoever. But if you talk to a president on the phone and you say, what's the deal with this corruption? All of a sudden, that's beyond the pale. You could murder people. You could cause regime change wars. You could spend billions of taxpayer dollars to go to your wealthy friends to bail them out. None of that's an abuse of power. Just don't talk to a president on the phone. And isn't it funny how we see over and over and over again? Again, my challenge stands out there. Other than annulments, name me one crime that Trump's accused or anyone connected to Trump's been accused of that we haven't seen a more blatant or severe version from the Democratic Party or the intel agencies. Name me one. Abuse of power? Obstruction of Congress? I remember when Congress subpoenaed emails from Hillary Clinton and they bleach bit them. So apparently, if Donald Trump, instead of saying, hey, we're actually going to take these subpoenas to court, if he would have just burned every piece of evidence that was asked for by the Democrats would have been like, oh yeah, that's fine. It's okay to destroy the subpoenaed evidence, but you can't go to court to keep us from getting it. That's obstruction of Congress. That's how ridiculous these people are. Let's see if I'm missing anything in the chat. Modus. Yeah, that's one way of putting it, right? So that's what's going on. Now, let's look at how this whole process started. One of the themes that I've had since this sham began was, I don't think, and I know John and I were talking about this earlier, I don't think that the Republicans did a very good job of defending Trump in the House impeachment hearing. I think that there were good people like Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz, and there were ones making great points. But to me, they were arguing from a defensive position instead of an offensive position. And I've talked about this a lot, so I'm not going to harp on it too much, but basically the argument's this. Even if you win that it wasn't a quid pro quo, you could still make the case that the Democrats could win, yes, but still, Trump trying to get dirt on Biden is still impeachable. That's still abuse of power, even if it wasn't a quid pro quo. You could make that argument. But if you were to make the reverse argument, the best argument, that Trump not only was well within his rights to investigate corruption between the Bidens and the Obama administration, but it was actually his duty to do so, then it doesn't matter if there was a quid pro quo. Because here's the truth. There may have been a quid pro quo. I haven't seen definitive evidence of it, but there might have been. And so if you concede, yes, if there was a quid pro quo, then this is a big deal. This could be impeachable. You've started off on the back foot from the get-go. So the Republicans spent 99% of their time arguing it wasn't a quid pro quo and the whistleblower is corrupt. But both of those are defensive arguments. You can make those arguments, and you should. But you should be focusing the bulk of your time on the corruption of Obama, on the corruption of Biden, and the corruption of Biden's son Hunter, and on Ukrainian election interference in 2016. That's where the bulk of this should be. But let's talk about how this started. So we know who the whistleblower is. His name's Eric Chermella. We know. We know that Eric Chermella, who's the whistleblower, was not a first-hand whistleblower. So he's not really a whistleblower. He's more like a rumor monger, is what I would call him. He didn't hear the phone call. He heard through someone else who heard someone say they heard the phone call that there were problems. I've gone through the whistleblower's complaint and showed how he was wrong over and over again in things that he said. I've picked that apart. So it was based on garbage to start with. Chermella, by the way, was someone who was working in the Ukraine for the State Department, working with the exact same type of people that Biden was pressuring. So he had skin in the game. That would be like if Rudy Giuliani becomes a whistleblower about something in Congress. Something that Adam Schiff did. They'd be like, well, yeah, but of course Rudy's going to say that. Excuse me. Hey, what's up, Duke? Thanks for being here, man. Thank you, Barry, for being here. Yeah, and you're right, Barry. It is a technocracy, and it is a global conspiracy from these globalists. The establishment in this country is equally with the establishment in the EU, the rest of the globalists. That's what it's about. It's about eroding national pride, national barriers. They want to have basically, I know it sounds like Alex Jones conspiracy stuff, but guess what? Alex Jones has been proven right quite often recently, huh? They do want a one world government. They want globalism. They want globalism and the entire world to be modeled after cities like San Francisco, where they all live in extreme decadence and wealth, and that all of us are totally reliant on them, even for our food, even for our energy, even for our housing. They want us to be total children that they take care of, just like the feudal ages, just like the serfs around the castles. That's what they want us to be. They want to live in the castle. They want us to be the serfs that are farming for them. That's what they want. And when we're no longer useful, we could just be scrapped. Okay, what do you say, John? The evidence that exists isn't admissible in court. That's the best way to handle it. Just deny the evidence. We can't get Biden in the trial to back up Trump's corruption claim. Well, it doesn't matter. Let's put the shoe on the other foot, John, okay? Let's say this happens, or if you're a Democrat that thinks this is all acceptable. Let's say, for argument's sake, that in 2020, the Republicans clean house, right? And not just establishment Republicans, but we actually have people that are, like, legitimate. Real people that actually care about normal America. Let's say they win. And let's say in the case of that, they say, we are impeaching Adam Schiff, we are impeaching Nancy Pelosi, we're impeaching Chuck Schumer, we're impeaching everyone in Congress that pushed the Russia collusion hoax and the investigations into Trump. We're impeaching them all, okay? All impeached, because they did this for political benefit. Now, that's beyond dispute. Clearly, this politically benefited, or at least they thought, all of these Democrats to push the Russia crap, to push the impeachment crap, okay? So let's say the Congress that wins, all these Republicans in the House say, yeah, we're impeaching all these Democrats. Because this was corrupt for them to want these investigations, and it was for political benefit. The Democrats' defense would be, but wait a minute, we thought there was actually potentially things that warranted investigating. And then the Republicans respond, oh, no, you can't talk about that. That's whataboutism. You can't talk about what Trump might have done or what people connected to Trump might have done. And they'll say, but what about Manafort? He goes, oh, no, you can't talk about Manafort. We're just here discussing, did you want an investigation? Did that investigation potentially help you politically? Okay, then you're impeached. Do you think the Democrats at that point would say, oh, okay, we'll just say that we didn't want an investigation. We'll just say we didn't because we won't be able to get Trump to testify. So we'll just say that we didn't. That's okay. Of course not. The Democrats are more shrewd than that. Of course, one, they have the entire establishment class and all the cultural institutions of power that shape the public narrative on their side. And the media would rightfully go ballistic. How can you say that someone should be removed for wanting an investigation and say, oh, and by the way, you're not allowed to talk about the evidence for why you wanted an investigation? I don't care if Joe Biden or Hunter Biden come or not. Subpoena them. When they say no, you say, okay, that's obstruction of Congress. You're all impeached. You're not allowed to hold office anymore. That's what you did to Trump. So you turn the same game on them. And even without the Bidens there, why could some Joe Schmo like me find evidence of this corruption sitting on my couch at home or my comfy chair here at my work office? The Republicans couldn't dig this information up? And I'll get to my section here where I go back and talk about something I wrote. Is Courtney on here? Yeah, John, they called it a conspiracy theory, but no one's debunked it. I've done video on a video after this, and I'm going to be talking about it further here. So that's, I think the Republicans made a mistake. Just real quick to finish on my first point here. So we know the whistleblower, that's shady, that was corrupt. Remember, they changed the rules. The intelligence community IG changed the rules. Remember this? It seems like so long ago, but remember, all of the documents said to be a whistleblower, you had to have first-hand knowledge. In other words, you couldn't just hear a rumor and still qualify as under whistleblower protections. But right before this whistleblower came forward, it turns out they changed the rules. And then the ICIG, I've read reports which I couldn't confirm, so I haven't talked about this, but I have read reports that there are connections through the ICIG and Eric Charmela's former boss that he worked for. But it seems very skeptical, very shady that the intelligence community completely changed what it meant to be a whistleblower just for this instance. As soon as they changed it, 2 days later, Charmela comes out and is like, oh, yeah. And by the way, I'm a secondhand whistleblower. I'm now covered. The defense with this was, oh, no, that was always the case. It's just the paperwork we had for all of the people in the intel community to see was written up wrong. To which I said, where was everyone in the media? Where are the Republicans saying, oh, so you mean for 8 years under Barack Obama, you had false papers out there that said to be a whistleblower, you needed firsthand knowledge? How many potential whistleblowers would we have had against Obama and his administration had it been properly articulated to intelligence community people? But no one asked that question. Let him off the hook again. Now, the second point, and you see a lot of people making this argument, but it is a good argument, and it's worth talking about. So, anyways, just real quick to summarize that, it is this entire process from the get-go has been corrupt. They leaked information from the closed-door testimony Schiff and his team did that made them look good, but they withheld evidence to the public that didn't fit their narrative. They refused to allow witnesses that didn't fit their narrative in the House testimony. They changed the rules for the whistleblower. The whistleblower had connections to Schiff. All of it from the get-go was a setup. And so it's rich for them to say, oh, now in the Senate, everything needs to be on the up and up. This is disgusting. And the media goes along with it, of course. So second, the point that everyone's making. How did you understand the way this impeachment process works, right? The argument is, in the House, you decide whether or not you do an investigation, basically. And I saw Ben Shapiro talk about this. This is a good analogy. I disagree with Ben on a lot, but this is a good analogy. Did you ever watch Law and Order? I used to love Law and Order. It's fallen off, trust me. But the idea of Law and Order was you have a show and it's broken into two halves. And so the first half would be police on the beat, do an investigation. There's a murder, and the police officers investigate the murder. And then the second half is now there's a trial. And so it switches. It's no longer focused on the police. Now it's focusing on the prosecutors, the district attorneys. This, what the House was the first half of Law and Order. It's the investigation, right? So they did the investigation and they took the evidence to the district attorney and they were like, yeah, there's a crime here, that Trump's guilty. And then the district attorney, or in this case, the Senate's supposed to go, okay, you've done the investigation, now we'll have the trial. But that's not what's happening. Instead, what's happening is the House is saying, we have a gut feeling Trump broke the law, but we didn't bother to get all the witnesses and the evidence that we need, so we're just going to send it to you and say you need to keep investigating. That is not what the Senate does in an impeachment hearing. They're supposed to be like the court. They're not the police on the street. Or an even better way of putting it would be, it's like if you're in a trial and you're found guilty and then it goes to the sentencing phase. So they found Trump guilty and said he's impeachable. Now it goes to the sentencing phase. So the judge is going to decide to sentence. Now, many times, I don't know about many, but sometimes what can happen is the judge can say, I don't see evidence that this crime was committed, so I'm overruling the jury. But what the judge can't do, what the people in the sentencing phase can't do, is say, I'm going to continue to investigate this on my own. That's not their job. So they look at the evidence that's there and say, okay, you said this guy was guilty of two things, abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. You said he's guilty. You gathered evidence, and based on that evidence, you said there is guilt. Now we will look at that evidence and make a determination ourselves. When the Democrats say, no, we need more witnesses, we need more evidence, that is an admission by them that there was not enough evidence for a guilty verdict in the first place. So there wasn't enough evidence to impeach. If there was, then Schiff and them would be like, yeah, great, the evidence is all there. Remember, they told you in the House side of things, it was damning, open and shut case. Okay, if the evidence is damning, fair enough. Present it to the Senate, surely they'll say, okay, yeah, it's damning. But they're not. And oh, by the way, we all got to see that evidence, and we knew it was garbage. But the media and the Democrats played this game. They pretended, oh, this is damning evidence coming out. Did you see Vindman's testimony? Did you see Yovanovitch's testimony? Oh, it was damning. Oh, the bombshell after bombshell. You remember when Viktor Sondland said there was a quid pro quo? Oh, but then it turned out he said, oh, the only time I talked to Trump, he said no quid pro quo. They said that was damning evidence. Just a bombshell. Earth-shattering. But now all of a sudden, oh, that evidence isn't enough. We need more evidence. The House is the ones that decided to move forward at the timetable that they moved. They're the ones who decided we want to get this out there as a PR victory. We want to smear Trump when he's having potential victories when it comes to passing things like the UMSCA or USMCA, economy numbers, etc., other things. So that's on them. Oh, you're right, John. This was done in the Clinton impeachment. Now, for the record, I was against the Clinton impeachment. And he perjured himself. Clearly, he actually committed a named crime. He lied under oath. It's perjury. But I didn't think it was impeachable. And I thought it was a sham. And I really didn't care who he philandered with in the White House at all. I don't care. I understand the impeachment investigation was about more than that. But we see that Schumer and the other people were vehemently against calling new witnesses. Now they're totally for it. And what's galling about it is, yes, absolutely, if you're someone who's thinking objectively, you say, yeah, but so what? A bunch of the Republicans have flipped completely too. You're right. But what's galling is, again, because the establishment controls the narrative, all of these Democrats not only get the total backing of the media, academia, entertainment industry, etc., when they've completely flopped in 20 years, but they also put the additional charge on that this is somehow moral. They're more moral than you. Oh, if you don't believe in this, you just want corruption of the highest order and you're an immoral person and the damage that will be done to the United States. Yet they had the exact opposite take. People like Schumer when calling witnesses in the Senate. Now, because of a few shills like Mitt Romney, McConnell wasn't able to just be like, listen, yeah, we're going to call witnesses. We got Hunter Biden. We got Joe Biden. We got Viktor Shokin. We have Leshchenko. We have Serhiy Leshchenko. We have Artem Sitnik. All people that I'll get to in a minute that would prove the corruption and Ukrainian election interference and corruption of the Bidens and Obama administration. Heck, I'd call Obama. And then when the Democrats whine and gnash their teeth, you say, too bad. That's what you did in the House. Not one witness spoke to Trump's intent. Now, I did see a little of stuff today. I saw Schiff and I saw others saying this was for Trump to steal the 2020 election. That's what this was about. How do they know? They haven't had one person talk to Trump's state of mind. They just are making the assumption of what Trump's intent was. And so the Republican defense would be, we're calling witnesses to speak. Was it possible for Trump's intent to be to investigate corruption? So we need to know if there was potential corruption. So we're going to call these witnesses. And when they refuse to comply to subpoenas or refuse to come forward, you just say, okay. Then clearly the Democrats have something to hide. The Republicans have no spine. And it's because some of them are establishment people that want Trump out of there anyways. I am a poser. This is a shirt my wife bought me from The Office. I've watched like 3 episodes of The Office. So, let me see what I had. Did you notice today, again, they were talking about how, they did this in the House too, they kept talking about, oh, if we didn't send this aid to the Ukraine, we jeopardized our national security because weapons needed to be sent to the Ukraine to fight Russia. First off, the javelins went. Remember, it was Obama that didn't send military aid to Ukraine. He sent billions of dollars in other aid. In fact, Obama specialized in this. He sent aid to their energy sector, and then people in the energy sector in the Ukraine hired John Kerry's son, hired Joe Biden's son, a bunch of other politicians, family members were involved in things like that. And so our tax dollars go to the energy sector in the Ukraine. The energy sector in the Ukraine hires a bunch of politicians that voted for this as family, and then they get millions of dollars. See how that nice circle goes? Your money going into the pockets of politicians and their family. You see how that works? But somehow, they're so disingenuous, they'll say, oh, well, we had no problem with Obama not sending actual military defense, but when Trump thought to withhold it, even though he sent the javelins, that wasn't part of the aid that was withheld, that was jeopardizing our conflict with Russia. This is, again, about it's still about Russia. Pelosi said it the other day. Do we want the American people deciding the 2020 election? Or do we want Russia deciding the 2020 election? Says a drunken Pelosi. Still about Russia. That's been debunked. They're still on about it. It's been from before Trump was even in office. They've said, we're going to take this guy out. We're going to impeach him. Remember, what was it? The Washington Post said, impeachment starts today. The day that Trump was elected. Everybody knows it. All of these pundits, the Jake Tappers, the Rachel Maddows, heck, even the Fox News people, Chris Wallace, they all know that this was the plan from the get-go. Remember, 3 times before this, 3 times before the Ukrainian business, Democrats put forth articles of impeachment. One time for calling Haiti a shithole country. One time for the Helsinki press conference with Putin. That was impeachable. That was a high crime or misdemeanor because some Democrat leaked out that Trump in a private briefing said Haiti was an S-hole country. That was impeachable, said many of the Democrats. But we have to take them seriously. Now it's somber and serious now. Now things are really out of control. They said the same crap about Russia, right? Oh, that we've seen the evidence, says Adam Schiff. Says Eric Swalwell. We've seen the evidence that Trump conspired with Putin and the Russians. We've personally seen the evidence. The FBI would never use unverified information to spy on someone connected to Trump's campaign. Never. That's Devin Nunes lying to you. He's corrupt. We need to have an ethics investigation of Devin Nunes, which they got. And it was all lies. All of that was a lie. Now the same people are in front of you telling you, but this time it's different. They know. All of them know. All of them. More xenophobia. I actually listened to a Democrat the other day say in the debate, which one was it? I can't remember, maybe it was Steyer, that this was the Republicans are the party of McCarthy. They're engaged in McCarthyism. Literally, you have a Democratic Party that says Russians are hiding under every bed. They're still trying to impeach Trump about a Russia lie that they pushed for 3 years. That was sourced by Kremlin agents. They actually spread Russian disinfo against the president. The FBI took that and violated FBI policy 17 times to spy on Trump's campaign using Kremlin disinformation. And they have the nerve to tell you over and over again, you who are questioning this, you're the one spreading Russian disinformation. And then they call you a McCarthyist when they're saying everyone's a Russian stooge. I mean, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. So, okay, let's get to the meat of what's going on. So, I've talked often. I'm going to shrink my face again. I know, everyone gets upset. Oh. I've talked often about this, and hopefully if you're new here, I'll make this as quick as possible. We as Americans disagree on a lot of things. That's fine. Diversity is a strength. I don't care diversity, your skin color, your ethnicity, your sexual preference. None of that matters. When they talk about diversity, the reason diversity is a strength is because diversity of opinions, diversity of ideas, then the cream rises to the top. I love debate. I love talking to people who disagree with me. All that stuff's good stuff. But we have to have fundamental agreements or we just can't have a successful country. So for example, like take something that we have to know murder's wrong. If you are talking to someone that's like, I don't think murder's a bad thing, you can't then have a reasonable discussion. You couldn't govern in a nation with that person, right? If that person had some sort of power, because it's like we literally, you have to have a foundation. And there's all sorts of foundations you need. Here's a foundation I propose. Anytime that Congress approves aid of our tax dollars to go somewhere, and someone in the executive branch withholds that aid on the condition that a prosecutor be fired that's looking into their family's company, there needs to be an investigation. Period. I don't care if your name's Trump. I don't care if your name's Biden, if it's Obama, if it's Bush. Doesn't matter. I don't care what your justifications are. There at least needs to be a hearing. Period. If a town council says they're going to give money to 5 companies around town to help beautify the city, and one of those companies is owned by the mayor's rival, and the mayor says, we're going to withhold that money going to that company that my rival owns, there should be an investigation. Now, maybe the mayor has good reasons. Well, that rival's company's been corrupt or it hasn't done good work. That's fine, but there needs to be an investigation. They have to answer for that. It's the same here. I don't care that Christine Lagarde at the IMF said, yes, Biden was right to issue that quid pro quo. I don't care that people in the EU said it. And I know this might shock you. I don't care that Rachel Maddow thinks that or that Jake Tapper thinks that. I don't care. That's not how we govern. Congress approved the aid. You wanted someone fired who was looking at your son's company, so you threatened to withhold the aid. That warrants an investigation, period. Now, there's all sorts of evidence after that shows the corruption of the Bidens and the Obama administration. If there was a reason to investigate the Bidens, if there was a reason to investigate 2016 Ukrainian election interference, then there is no case to impeach Trump. Because the Democrats have shown us they had no problem with Obama seeking to get information about Trump's team or Obama's agencies that were under him, seeking to get information about Trump's team from foreign countries. They said, the stakes were so high, Trump's team might have been corrupt and may have been Russian oligarchs. Let's see what she's saying here. Courtney, you know when you're texting me, I'm trying to do a video here. And I love you, Courtney. Good night. My wife's obsessed with the grocery store Aldi's. She's like on some group online where anytime there's a new special at Aldi's, she'll text me and be like, oh my goodness, wait until you see what they have at Aldi's this week. So she's on my chat stream, a moderator, and she's texting me about Aldi's deals as she knows that I'm rambling and raving here. You're the best, Courtney. Yeah, the president's lawyers did good today. They did. But that's the point. That's where they need to have their focus. Was there reason? Now, we know, like I was saying before I was rudely interrupted with Aldi's news, we know that the Democrats had no problem with the Obama administration doing that. They had none with them. We know they had no problem with the Obama administration's quid pro quo under Joe Biden. None of them called for impeachment or an investigation into Obama and Biden. In fact, what they're doing, and that's what the big story is about this, they are seeking to criminalize investigating that quid pro quo. As a constant theme, Trump's big crime was one, winning the election, and second, the reason that it was such a big crime was because he might out there corruption. So they need to, at any given point, stop Trump from investigating their corruption. That's what this is about. Now, they know that Trump's not going to be removed, but they're going to try to smear him. They're going to try to stymie him for the 2020 election. They're going to spread lies. They have their media, the propaganda mouthpieces that are willing to do it for them. And trust me, before the 2020 election, you'll have all sorts of, you'll have people coming out making sexual assault allegations against Trump. That's their go-to playbook you saw with Kavanaugh. You'll have all sorts of scandals breaking at the last minute saying Trump's corrupt, Trump's corrupt, Trump's corrupt. Don't trust for a minute that they're not going to pull out all the stops. But the other thing they're doing is they're trying to dog whistle to Trump. Hey man, stop investigating us or we're going to ruin you. You go ahead and you play with your little agendas and you can talk about the wall and crap, and that's fine. We'll use our media to smear you about that. But we're going to bring the big guns out when you threaten to investigate our corruption. That cannot stand. And there's establishment people on the right that feel the same way. That's why the guns came out over the Ukraine. Why not other countries? He's threatened to withhold aid. Jay Sekulow, the president's lawyer, talked today about he threatened to withhold aid to Egypt. That was Obama that withheld aid to Egypt. But he threatened to withhold aid to all sorts of places. But it was only this time with Ukraine. Why is that? Oh, because there was a suggestion that this guy coming in the Ukraine, the new president, might have been furious that the Obama administration bullied around his country and said, you can't prosecute this person. You have to let this person commit crimes. You have to allow the people that interfered in the 2016 election off the hook. If you don't fire this prosecutor, then we're not going to pay you all this money. How would you feel in the United States, as a U.S. citizen, how would you feel if China did that to us? Oh, we're not going to abide by the terms of your trade deal unless you fire Bill Barr. Because Bill Barr's looking into Xi's nephew's company. So you fire Bill Barr, then we'll talk. What would you say as an American? You'd be like, screw that. You don't run our country. We're not going to choose who political appointees are based on you and based on your corruption. But that's exactly what happened in the Ukraine. So they couldn't have Trump talking to this guy in the Ukraine that might say, yeah, I'll give you the goods. I'll tell you exactly what Biden did. I'll tell you exactly what the Obama administration. So they're signaling to Trump. They're signaling to the Ukraine. Don't you dare investigate that. Don't you dare. We will ruin you. Now the Ukraine's looking into whether or not Rudy Giuliani improperly surveyed Yovanovitch, the disgraced fired ambassador. No problem with Yovanovitch spying on media members in the United States. No problem with that. But if an independent or if a citizen like Rudy Giuliani wants to look into Yovanovitch, all of a sudden that's a problem. Okay. So let's go back to something I wrote. This is again from the website Above Top Secret. This is me writing November 13th. Back when this was just getting underway in the House. So I'm just going to read what I wrote. Impeachment testimony witness George Kent testified today. He found Trump's request for an investigation into Burisma in the 2016 election interference to be very troubling. This is an important witness to the Democrats because he's supposed to be an expert on the Ukraine and someone who has been working with them as a bureaucrat for some time. The problem is, George Kent is not an unbiased expert as being portrayed. He's actually a person who has a lot of incentive to not want to see an investigation into the 2016 election interference. Kent testified about a lot, but I want to focus on his testimony about the 2016 election interference from the Ukraine. Here's a short video. I'm not going to play the video for you. Kent claims there's no evidence of this interference from the Ukraine. That is a lie. Either he's covering up that evidence or he's incredibly inept, as even I, just a regular guy, have seen the evidence. For example, here is Ukrainian politician Serhiy Leshchenko admitting in August of 2016, that's 2 months before the election, a few months before the election to a mainstream media outlet in the US, the Financial Times, that he and other officials in the Ukraine had interfered in the election to help Hillary and would continue to do so because they disliked Trump's policies. From the Financial Times. For years, Serhiy Leshchenko was a top Ukrainian anti-corruption campaigner, worked to expose the kleptocracy under former President Yanukovych. Now he's focusing on a new perceived pro-Russian threat to the Ukraine, U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump. The prospect of Mr. Trump, who has praised Ukrainian archenemy Vladimir Putin, becoming leader of the country's biggest ally has spurred not just Mr. Leshchenko, but Kiev's wider political leadership to do something they would never have attempted before, intervene, however indirectly, in the U.S. election. Mr. Leshchenko and Ukraine's Anti-Corruption Bureau, that's the NABU that was financed by Obama and buried cases for Obama all the time, published a secret ledger this month that authorities claim show millions of dollars of off-the-book cash payments to Paul Manafort, Trump's campaign manager. This is Leshchenko. Quote, a Trump presidency would change the pro-Ukrainian agenda in American foreign policy, Mr. Leshchenko said. For me, it was important to show not only the corruption aspect, but that he is a pro-Russian candidate who could break the geopolitical balance of the world. Do you see this? The Russia crap started even before the election. What was Trump's big sin with Russia? He didn't want to go to war with them. He wanted to have better relations with them. Oh, that's not you can't do that, says the military-industrial complex, says the intel agency, says the establishment Democratic Party, says John McCain, says Jeff Flake, says Mitt Romney. You can't do that. You have to push for war. That's an admission in a mainstream media outlet of a Ukrainian politician saying, yes, I'm interfering in the election. Admitted 2 months before the election. Did the media go wild? The same media that said it was an act of war if Russia interfered in the election. We could leave no stone unturned if Russia interfered in the election. Now, George Kent, as I'm about to get to here, is the first witness that was called by the Democrats. Remember, this is important to remember. Before the House impeachment hearing, right, before that, there was closed-door testimony. So many of the witnesses that you got to hear publicly actually testified in a closed-door meeting first. And then Schiff and the Democrats selectively released what they wanted from those closed-door meetings to make Trump look bad to their media propaganda allies. That's what was going on, okay? So, you follow, let me check the stream. Everybody following me so far? Now, why is this important? If Ukraine interfered in the 2016 election, we were told over and over by the entire media class, by the entire academia class, by everyone in the entertainment industry, by the entire Silicon Valley class, by the entire intel community, by everyone at the State Department, and by the Democrats. We were told foreign election interference is the most important thing that we could look at. It will crush our democracy. So here we have an admission. Okay, Ukraine's interfering. Now the Democrats have spent the last 2 months telling you, well, clearly Ukraine couldn't have interfered because Russia did. Because they think you're so stupid as a normal American that you can't realize more than one people can be doing something at a time. That's the lack of respect. They're not even trying anymore. That's their official narrative. Oh, well, Ukraine couldn't have interfered, Russia did. They asked every witness this, the Democrats did in the House. Isn't it true that it was Russia and not the Ukraine that interfered? And all the witnesses from the State Department, your George Kents, your Yovanovitches, your Vindmans, your Fiona Hill said, oh, yes, it was Russia. It couldn't have been the Ukraine because it was Russia, yeah. These are the expert witnesses on the Ukraine. They didn't know about Ukrainian election interference. I guess I should be hired as Ukrainian expert in the State Department because I know worlds more than these people that have been in the field for 20 years. By the way, on the end about that Black Ledger, here's arguments that you'll hear from the Democrats or their supporters. Well, yeah, but Manafort was corrupt. Oh, so it's okay for a foreign government to interfere as long as the information they're giving's correct? As long as the person they're talking about's corrupt? Okay, then why are we talking about the Russia hacks again? Everything in the WikiLeaks cache was true. It all showed corruption from the Democrats in the Clinton campaign. But that was unforgivable. And by the way, this evidence from the Black Ledger that was released, there's now investigations going on in the Ukraine whether that evidence was ever honest in the first place. And Mueller, who had no reason, him and his team had no reason to cover for Manafort or for Trump. They did everything they can to get them all. They found the evidence in that Black Ledger so dubious that they didn't even use it. So if this was honest, truthful evidence, why wouldn't Mueller's team have used it? So what it looks like is a bunch of politicians and investigators in the Ukraine released fabricated evidence about Donald Trump to harm his chances in August of 2016, 2 months before the election. They publicly admitted to the mainstream media, yes, we're doing this because we don't like Trump's policies. So we're interfering. And the media tells you, the Democrats tell you, that's all debunked. None of that's true. That's what they say. Don't believe the actual word, just like they tell you with Biden. Don't believe Biden when he said he did a quid pro quo. Don't believe his actual words. He was lying there. But trust Biden everywhere else. The same here with this Leshchenko guy. Don't believe him when he admits he interfered. No, he didn't interfere. Okay, yeah. What's Barry? What did you say, Barry? I'll try to answer it. Oh, we're talking facial recognition. Yeah, I'm not on that right now, but I'll be happy to talk about that at some point in the future. But carry on. Grab some more water here. So now the Democrats in the impeachment are arguing it was immoral for Trump to want to investigate election interference. Think about this. If they claim Russia interfered in the election, okay, right? So let's say for whatever reason, a Republican-controlled Congress after 2016 says, hey, we're going to send some aid to Russia. You know, we're going to give some money to the government of Russia for whatever. Maybe there was a natural disaster or anything there. Do you think the Democrats would have been like, oh, that's cool. No need to see if Russia's corrupt. They'd have said, oh my God, the Republicans are trying to give aid to the country that just interfered in the election to help Trump. This is proof that Trump broke the law. This is proof that Trump engaged in trying to buy the election and steal the election with Russia's help. That's what they would have said. But when Ukraine interferes to help Hillary and Congress votes to send the Ukraine money, Congress says, you can't investigate Ukrainian election interference. You just give them that money. It does not matter if they interfered in the election because they interfered to benefit us. This isn't deniable. Again, I say this all the time. Check out Glenn Beck's channel. Go to YouTube, check out Glenn Beck and type in Artem Sitnik, which I'll be talking about him in a moment. There's audio of Artem Sitnik admitting, yes, I interfered in the election. We all did to help Hillary. Admitting it. So let's continue here. Here's an article from left-wing Politico by now New York Times writer Ken Vogel and a partner that showed Leshchenko admit to interfering and showed they worked with a DMC operative named Alexandra Chalupa. Ukrainian government officials tried to help Hillary Clinton and undermine Trump by publicly questioning his fitness for office. They also disseminated documents implicating a Trump aide in corruption and suggested they were investigating the matter, only to back away after the election. And they helped Clinton's allies research damaging information on Trump and his advisors, a Politico investigation found. A Ukrainian-American operative who was consulting for the Democratic National Committee met with top officials in the Ukraine embassy in Washington in an effort to expose ties between Trump, top campaign aide Manafort, and Russia, according to people with direct knowledge of the situation. A former Ukrainian investigative journalist and current parliamentarian named Serhiy Leshchenko, who was elected in 2014 as part of Poroshenko's party, held a news conference to highlight the ledgers and to urge Ukrainian and American law enforcement to aggressively investigate Manafort. Quote, I believe and understand the basis of these payments are totally against the law. We have the proof from these books, Leshchenko said during the news conference, which attracted international media coverage. Quote, if Mr. Manafort denies these allegations, I think he has to be interrogated into this case and prove his position that he was not involved in misconduct. Admissions, that's Politico, a writer now for the New York Times. Now, they've tried to back away from this, but they're admitting, yes, there was election interference from the Ukraine. Now, me moving on. How can a Ukrainian expert not be aware of this interference when it was public knowledge? Well, it turns out he was aware. In fact, he wrote letters asking Ukrainian prosecutors to stop investigating Ukrainians connected to the Obama administration and acknowledges pressure was put on Ukraine prosecutors to drop investigations into Ukrainians that were accused of and at one point found guilty of interfering in the 2016 election. This is from John Solomon, who's amazing. Do you understand what I just said there? I know I talk a little fast. George Kent testified, no. No one at State Department ever pressured Ukrainian prosecutors to drop cases. That never happened. That's what he testified to. Okay? He said that Leshchenko's this prosecutor. So let me just back up in case you don't know the whole situation. What Biden and Obama did was they forced this prosecutor named Viktor Shokin out. Viktor Shokin was basically the top prosecutor in the Ukraine. He was tasked with investigating Burisma and Burisma's supposedly corrupt owner, a man by the name of Zlochevsky. The Obama administration, including Biden, said that Burisma and its owner, Zlochevsky, were corrupt. So part of their narrative is Shokin, the prosecutor who was looking into this corrupt company that Hunter Biden was on the board of directors of, he was corrupt himself. The prosecutor was corrupt and wasn't actively investigating. So they wanted Shokin out. That's what they said. Now Biden, if you go back and you watch that famous clip from the CFR where he says, I told him, you have 6 hours and I'm getting on that plane and you're not getting your money, right? That whole speech where he admits to the quid pro quo. At the end of it, he says, and then they replaced him with a prosecutor who was solid at the time. That prosecutor's name is Leshchenko, not to be confused with Leshchenko, who was the guy who corruptly interfered in the election. Leshchenko was this prosecutor, and Leshchenko said, he talked to John Solomon, he said that the State Department, including Yovanovitch, would routinely tell him, here are people you're not allowed to prosecute. George Kent and Yovanovitch and Fiona Hill and Vindman, they all said that's a lie. That never happened. So let's see what John Solomon says about this, from his article. Quote, my sources told me specifically that the U.S. Embassy had pressured the Ukraine prosecutors in 2016 to drop or avoid pursuing several cases, including one involving the Soros-backed Anti-Corruption Action Center that, by the way, the United States and Obama sent money to as well, and 2 cases involving Ukrainian officials who criticized Donald Trump and his campaign manager Manafort. To back up their story, my sources provided me a letter then embassy official George Kent wrote proving it happened. State officials authenticated the letter, and Kent recently acknowledged this in testimony he signed that letter. You could read the letter here. I'm not going to bring the letter up, but he did. Now, I know people complain about the source, so here's the actual letter. And then State Department officials, including Yovanovitch, were pressuring Ukraine to drop investigations into people connected with the Obama administration. Do you see this? Now, all of these witnesses against Trump, they all say, oh, we're impartial. We're career state people. We're experts on the Ukraine. And we're appalled that Trump would want to interfere in the prosecutorial decisions of the Ukraine and try to interfere on investigations that they do. Yet these exact people we're doing these investigations with the Obama administration. We're interfering in investigations in the Ukraine to help Obama. Do you not think that they all have skin in the game? They don't want an investigation into that because guess whose name's going to come up? Yovanovitch, George Kent, Fiona Hill, Vindman, all of their names are going to come up. Oh, you people were actively helping Ukrainians interfere in the election to help Hillary. You people were actually covering for people that were committing crimes that were connected to the Obama administration. So of course they don't want an investigation. If I commit some crime and I'm in a position of power and some new guy gets elected and says, I'm going to investigate that crime, you're damn right I'm probably going to say, no, I think it's a bad idea to investigate that. I think that's corrupt to want to investigate it. Let's see what else is said in this article. I provided the names that Leshchenko claimed had been cited by the embassy. That senior official said he couldn't speak to what transpired in the specific meeting between Yovanovitch and Leshchenko. And brief pause here. Remember, all of these witnesses said Leshchenko's a liar. He's a liar. Don't believe it because they know Leshchenko was going public saying, look, these State Department officials were corrupt. They were telling me to drop investigations into Obama-connected people. Biden said Leshchenko was a solid guy. But now, just as always, everyone's solid as soon as when they're backing up the establishment and when they're backing up the Democratic Party. But as soon as they say, well, wait a minute, there were some things they say, oh, now you're corrupt. Now we can't believe you. It's the same with Zelensky, the president now. Everyone said Zelensky's a stand-up guy. All the Democrats say, oh, they're great. He's great. He's a stand-up guy. If Zelensky comes out tomorrow and goes, my God, my prosecutor found evidence that, yes, there actually was corruption with Biden. All of a sudden, Zelensky will be corrupt. Oh, we can't trust Zelensky now. That'll be what they say. So moving on. That official provided me this surprising confirmation. Quote, I can confirm to you that at least some of those names are names the U.S. Embassy Kiev raised with the general prosecutor because we were concerned about retribution and unfair treatment of Ukrainians viewed as favorable in the United States. In other words, state was confirming its own embassy had engaged in pressure on the Ukrainian prosecutors to drop law enforcement cases, just as Leshchenko and the Ukrainian officials had said. In other words, the information that Rudy Giuliani got about the corruption of the Obama administration State Department, pressuring Ukrainian officials to drop cases that would have negatively impacted Obama, that's all true. That's admitted by the State Department. Admitted. Now, don't take my word for it. We'll just continue here for a second. This upset Ukrainians who didn't want to be bossed around and told they couldn't prosecute. The irony of this is Kent himself defended Yovanovitch, and he and Taylor testified that if Ukraine thought they were being pressured by the U.S., it would harm them and help Russia. Remember, that's their big narrative. Oh, see, the Ukrainians' new and burgeoning government, they're really good people. But if they feel that Donald Trump was pressuring them to do something, that would be a signal to Russia that Ukraine could be bullied around. That's what they testified to. Yet here we have the very same people saying that. Their State Department, then when they were at the State Department, were doing exactly that, pressuring the Ukraine to drop investigations. As always, accusing the others of what they do. Believe it or not, it gets worse. Kent also testified that he knew the State Department told Ukrainian prosecutors it was a problem for them to investigate the head of the NABU, a guy by the name of Artem Sitnik, who was being investigated for interfering in the 2016 election to help Hillary. From the article again. More recently, George Kent, the embassy's charge d'affaires in 2016 and now Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, confirmed in impeachment testimony that he personally signed the April 2016 letter demanding Ukraine drop the case against the Anti-Corruption Action Center, that again was funded jointly by Obama's State Department and by George Soros. So these Soros-funded groups were breaking financial laws into Ukraine. Ukrainian prosecutors were like, hey, we're going to look into this. And Obama, who was backing your tax dollars going to Soros-backed groups, said, no, you can't investigate them. That's George Kent signed the letter. The same George Kent that testified, we didn't pressure Ukrainians to drop investigation. He's lying. He lied under oath. We have the letter proving it. Signed by him. Continuing, he also testified he was aware of pressure the U.S. Embassy also applied on Ukraine prosecutors to drop investigations against a journalist named Vitaly Shubunyan, a parliamentary member named Serhiy Leshchenko. Sound familiar? And a senior law enforcement official named Artem Sitnik. The two guys that admitted to interfering in the 2016 election. George Kent's admitting. What did he admit? They applied pressure on Ukrainian prosecutors to drop those investigations. Now I want to pause here for a second. We'll go see what the chat's saying. Or you guys are still on. Oh yeah, Bill Hicks, the man. You guys still talking aliens and facial recognition. I should jump into your conversation. Do you understand the significance of this, though? Just take this in a glass case, just in its own bubble. We've spent 3 years saying the most serious thing that could happen to this country is foreign election interference. If someone in the Trump administration, acting on behalf of Donald Trump, was pressuring foreign governments to drop investigations into election interference that benefited him, there would be millions of people right now marching in the street demanding Trump be removed immediately. But under the Obama administration, no problem. No problem at all. The State Department officials that were appointed by Obama that were leftovers defending and trying to criminalize any investigation into the interference that helped Obama and helped the Democrats, no problem. This is admitted. This isn't conspiracy theories. It's admitted by their own witness, George Kent. Yet Jake Tapper, I saw when Jim Jordan broke this up, said these are all debunked conspiracy theories. It's incredible. Why aren't the Republicans talking about this every single day? How hard would it be for them to pick up The actual transcript of George Kent's testimony and be like, dude, this is what you said right here. You admitted that you pressured Ukraine to drop investigations into U.S. election interference. You admitted that. You said the State Department did that. An admission by you. And you and your cohorts that did that, you're the big witnesses against Donald Trump? So let's continue. So where we last left off, they testified that at least 3 individuals the State Department pressured Ukraine to stop investigations of. A journalist named Shokin, Leshchenko, and Sitnik. Okay, remember the names Leshchenko and Sitnik. Let's get to Shokin real quick. Shokin helped for the Anti-Corruption Action Center that Soros funded, and Leshchenko and Sitnik were criticized by Ukrainian court for interfering in the 2016 election by improperly releasing or publicizing the secret evidence in an ongoing case against Manafort. Now this next part, it's bad as all this sounds, and I hope you're with me that this corruption is immense. What makes this corruption immense? It's not just that what we've been told for 3 years, foreign election interference, that we actually have evidence that people operating to defend the Obama administration within our government were sabotaging investigations into election interference that benefited them. That's a bombshell enough. But what makes it the cherry on top is these are the actual witnesses against Trump, accusing Trump of doing what they actually did. And the last thing, that's just, if that was the cherry, this is just like, you put the whipped cream even then past the cherry, and you just put like half a can on Ready Whip on everything. Maybe you're starting to see how I got the body figure that I have. That's what this would be. This isn't speculation. This isn't, secondhand knowledge like all the stuff against Trump. Well, one of my staffers overheard one of Sondland's staffers say they overheard one of Trump's staffers say Trump said X. It's not that. It's straight from the source. From his own testimony that he swore to under oath of George Kent. Now remember, Artem Sitnik was the head of the NABU. Let's talk about the NABU for a minute. Obama, when Poroshenko comes in, for those of you who don't know, I'll make this as simple as possible. You had a president in the Ukraine, Yanukovych, who was supposedly this Putin ally. Probably was. And then the U.S. helped overthrow this. Check out my video on SJG Perspectives channel I did with him the other day, the live stream about this. Storm Clouds Gathering did a good video about how the U.S. backed basically fascists and pseudo-white supremacists to overthrow the government. And then they installed Poroshenko. But anyways, there was a pro-Russian president. He gets overthrown with the help of the U.S. Now there's a pro-U.S. president, pro-Obama president put in. His name's Poroshenko. Eventually, Zelensky wins, who's a stand-up comedian, with 75% of the vote running on one issue. We're tired of this corruption. Because Ukrainians, probably just like Americans, just want people representing them that care about them. Not that care about the United States. Not that care about Russia. They want people that represent them. So that's what went on. Part of the condition once Poroshenko got put in for Obama's State Department sending all of this money to the Ukraine was they had to start basically their own version of the FBI, which they called the NABU. And Obama helped finance this with our money. And then they were tasked with investigating corruption. Only problem is the NABU routinely buried things for Obama. So it was basically Obama's little personal investigative agency in the Ukraine. Go after the people he wanted, protect the people he wanted. Many of those were backed by George Soros. So that's what was going on there. This NABU was incredibly allied with Obama. So real quick, just back on the Hunter Biden thing. Remember, we were told this is the narrative from the establishment. This is the Biden narrative, the Obama narrative, the media narrative. Viktor Shokin, this prosecutor, was corrupt. He wasn't looking in to Burisma, the company that Hunter Biden was on the board of directors of. So they wanted him fired. Now, never mind that I've showed you in video after video. That's not true. Shokin, the month before he was forced to be fired by Joe Biden, actually seized the assets of the owner of Burisma. So he was working on the case. It was only when he actually seized the assets that then Joe Biden jumped into action, as requested by Zlochevsky's lawyers, but that's getting off in the weeds. But anyways, let's make the story as simple as possible. So let's say Biden's right. He really just wanted his son investigated harder. That's their narrative. Actually, by getting Shokin out of there, Burisma really could have been investigated. The company that Biden's son was making millions of dollars with. Finally, they could be investigated. That's what Biden wanted. The company that was paying his son millions of dollars to really be investigated. You can't make this up. But okay, let's go with that. All right. So surely then, they got rid of the corrupt prosecutor, so where's it going to go? Oh, the NABU got the investigation? Well, they're allies with Obama. Now, Obama and Biden know that Burisma's corrupt. They know that its owner's corrupt, and now they're allies, that they funded the NABU have the investigation. So surely no excuses now. Burisma's finally going to go down. Oh, what's that? The NABU buried the investigation? Isn't that strange? Huh. It's almost like what happened was they just wanted a prosecutor that might actually investigate the crimes out of the way. Then it could get into their allies' hands who they trusted to bury the investigation. And that's exactly what happened. But anyways, I want you to pay attention. I know I ramble and I'm jumping all over the place. Pay attention to this next paragraph. And I want you to ask yourself if this sounds familiar, okay? So Artem Sitnik was the head of the NABU. He's the head of the FBI of the Ukraine that Obama has been allied with, that's burying cases for Obama, that Obama's sending money to, right? This is John Solomon. As for Sitnik, the head of the NABU, Anti-Corruption Police, Kent added, this is George Kent, State Department official, first witness against Trump in impeachment. Ready? Here's Kent's words. We warned both Leshchenko and others that efforts to destroy the NABU as an organization, including opening up investigations of Sitnik, threatened to unravel a key component of our anti-corruption cooperation. Now, George Kent knows that Sitnik has been credibly accused and was found guilty, though it was later the conviction was dropped on a technicality, but was under investigation and found guilty by a Ukrainian court for interfering in the 2016 election to help Hillary Clinton. And George Kent in the State Department, as this investigation's going on, is going to the Ukrainian prosecutors and saying, you better drop that investigation. Or, listen to what he says here, it would unravel a key component of our anti-corruption cooperation. What was the anti-corruption cooperation? Well, it was the billions of dollars that was being sent. What did George Kent just issue here? Anyone? Do we got anyone in the audience? I'll wait a second and see if anyone can come up. Could you come up with a term where someone says, we're going to stop giving you cooperation. We're going to stop giving you $1 billion unless you drop this investigation. Can anyone come up with a word that maybe that's been in the news a lot? That would be? I know I'm a couple seconds behind here, so I'll just stall for time and do like the Jeopardy music or something. Anyone? I am based, aren't I? We'll give you a couple more seconds. What would that be? I say you will only get our cooperation, our money, if you do this. Is there a word for that? Is there a term that's been batted around? Oh, John Jacobs, the big winner. A quid pro quo. Isn't that interesting? Wow. So you mean to tell me that State Department officials operating on behalf of Barack Obama were telling Ukrainian prosecutors, if you continue to investigate Ukrainian election interference that helped our side, that helped Hillary Clinton and the Democrats, we will stop sending you money. How is this not national news? How is every Republican? This wasn't said on Alex Jones' show. He didn't say this on some blog with Rob Knorr. He said this under oath in the closed door impeachment testimony. Then when it was the public testimony, they said, oh, Leshchenko's a liar. We never pressured him to drop investigations. And not one damn Republican on that board that were defending Trump said that's garbage. That's exactly what you said you did in the closed-door testimony. Not one Republican said that. That's outrageous. What's up, Gail? Thanks for being here. Now remember, the quid pro quo, and this is another point that I need to talk about. Again, you've heard me say over and over, it's not the quid pro quo that's impeachable or that's a crime. We know this because it's done all the time. We know that Biden and Obama admitted to using a quid pro quo in the Ukraine, and the Democrats didn't have a problem with it. Neither did the State Department officials. The problem is, what was the intent behind the quid pro quo? That's what they say the problem is. Now, we have no idea what Biden and Obama's intent is. We can speculate, but there was never an investigation. The same's true of Trump. We can speculate what his intent is, but we don't know. No one said, Trump said, I'm doing this to win the election. No one's made that claim. He could have credibly been doing it to investigate corruption. It certainly is corrupt. So it's the intent that matters. But one of the things you hear is they say, well, Trump's intent must have been to help him in the 2020 election. They say that's election interference. Asking a foreign country to get dirt, and this is the same with Russia, right? Remember, think about this for a second with the Russia collusion stuff, right? The argument was that Trump and his team sought to get dirt on his opponents from Russians, right? And so in order to prove that, the FBI, Obama's DOJ, the DNC, and the Hillary campaign, they paid a foreign spy to get dirt from Russians on Trump to prove Trump was trying to get dirt on Hillary from Russians. Do you get that? That would be like me saying, I think John Jacobs stole something out of my house, so I'm going to break into his house and steal a bunch of stuff to prove that he stole from my house. And stealing's bad, but my stealing wasn't bad because I was stealing to prove he stole. Getting dirt from Russians is bad, so we'll get dirt from Russians to prove you tried to get dirt from Russians. Which is insane. But anyways, neither here nor there right now. But they say trying to get dirt from your opponents, on your opponents, that's election interference. But you could also have election interference that went the other way, right? So if you're trying to win an election through kind of unscrupulous tactics, what's some of the things you could do? One thing you could do is you could get dirt and get bad stories on your opponent. But another thing you could do is prevent bad stories from coming out about you and your team, right? So if you're seeking to have foreign governments withhold information, protect information about dirt on you or your side, that also would be just as equal election interference. So if it's election interference to ask, do you have dirt on someone who happens to be my opponent? Then it would also be election interference going into an election to say, we're going to issue a quid pro quo unless you bury the investigation into what could make us look bad going into the election. Both of those would influence the election, either creating a negative story about your opponent or stopping a negative story about yourself from coming out. Remember, Hillary Clinton was part of Obama's administration. The big talk was Obama was a scandal-free administration. How would it have affected the 2016 Democrats on whole if it came out that there was massive corruption going on in the Ukraine involving the vice president's son? Wouldn't it look good for them? So at least you could make a case with Trump's quid pro quo, there was a potential to at least investigate actual corruption. Even if you believe, well, I think Trump did it for personal reasons. There still was actual corruption that needed investigated. Compare that to what George Kent's doing here. George Kent is issuing a quid pro quo to stop investigations of corruption from coming out. Not only would the Obama State Department and all the intel agents that were corrupt, that were leftovers from the Obama and the establishment, not only will they not investigate election interference that benefited Hillary, they ain't going to do it. They go so far as to say, and we're going to make sure that no other country does it. And oh, Trump, if you try to just say, hey, I think that country should be allowed to have that investigation, and if they find evidence, give it to us, then we'll impeach you. Now, one of the arguments you might make is, okay, so I'm quoting for John Solomon, and a lot of left-wing people will say, John Solomon's corrupt. He doesn't know what he's talking about. That's garbage. John Solomon's one of the only good journalists we have. But fine. Fair enough. You don't want to take it from Solomon? He must be making it up. It must be lying. Let's go to the official transcript from George Kent's closed-door testimony. How pathetic is it that I've memorized what page this is on? Question. This is George Kent's the answer. Has the embassy ever communicated names not to prosecute for any reason? This is George Kent. That's not what the purpose of our advocacy or our program is. Our advocacy is to help in terms of programming, is to build capacity so they can have to go after corruption and investigate. The issue of whether we asked at any time that they follow up on a prosecution if there's a criminal nexus in the United States, we have several different ways of conveying that. But what Leshchenko alleged was that we were not doing a law enforcement to law enforcement request based on a criminal nexus in the United States, but we were politically asking them not to prosecute Ukrainians. We don't do that. Okay. Mr. Castor asks, question, any point in time were names of officials, whether it was for any reason shared with the prosecutor's office in connection with do not prosecute? Kent says, well, again, we do not go in and say don't prosecute. The types of conversations we have are construed differently. Do you see, truly a politician. We didn't say don't prosecute. You mentioned Sitnik earlier. Kent says, yes, Artem Sitnik, who's still and the first head of the so-called NABU, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau. And was he ever in the crosshairs of Leshchenko? Answer, yes, he was. Was he being investigated? Answer, to the best of my knowledge, yes. There were open investigations at Sitnik. Do you know if anyone ever asked Leshchenko to not investigate Sitnik? Answer, well, what I would say, I would characterize the interactions as different because we warned both Leshchenko and others that efforts to destroy the NABU as an organization, including opening up investigations of Sitnik, threatened to unravel a key component of our anti-corruption cooperation. In other words, that's straight from the testimony that he swore to under oath. Now, all the Republicans had access to this testimony. None of them brought it up. He says, oh, we didn't say don't prosecute Sitnik. We said, we don't want you unraveling the NABU. And one of the ways you could do that would be opening an investigation into Sitnik. And that would mean we can no longer cooperate with you. Do you see how that is? We didn't tell them to drop the investigation. We just told them if they did, they'd lose billions of dollars. That's what they're trying to argue. When they're up there on television, when they're in front of you in the open door testimony saying, Leshchenko's a liar. We never told them to drop investigations. Never once. We never told them that. This is how they're going to say, we didn't lie. Technically, we didn't tell them to drop the investigation. We said, hey, you can drop the investigation if you want, but we're not going to cooperate with you with our billions of dollars anymore. So, it will destroy, it'll jeopardize. It's up to you guys, though. Let's see. Please be respectful. I hope there's respect going on. Why isn't this the top story for anyone who's trying to defend Trump? Why aren't all the Republicans... Where's Mitch McConnell talking about this? Where's Lindsey Graham talking about this? Where was Matt Gaetz? Where was even Jim Jordan? And these are people I like. What do you think the American people would think? And I'll be done with this article now. I go on, but... heck, I'll read the rest of it real quick. Remember, Kent and the rest of the Democrats in the media are saying Trump threatened to withhold aid to the Ukraine if he didn't get things like he wanted, investigations. Here we have Kent, the star witness for the Democrats, admitting his department told Ukrainian prosecutors they were investigating Sitnik for illegally interfering in the 2016 election to help Hillary. That if they investigated Sitnik, it would harm the U.S. cooperation with Ukraine. That's unbelievable. This is, in fact, more of a direct and worse version of exactly what they're accusing Trump of. Threatening cooperation if the Ukraine investigated election interference that helped the Democrats in the 2016 election. And remember, Sitnik ran the NABU. This is the exact same agency that got the investigation into Burisma, Joe Biden's son's company, and basically let it go with only paying small fines. But Kent, who helped bury the investigations and interference that helped Democrats, says that to investigate Biden or Burisma would itself be corrupt. So him issuing quid pro quos to stop investigations that would harm Obama is not corrupt, but to investigate that would be corruption. Now, is there any reason that you could think of why George Kent wouldn't want Trump talking to Zelensky about what happened under the Obama administration? Maybe because Kent's directly implicated, so's Yovanovitch that was fired? But instead of saying, wow, these crimes occurred under Yovanovitch, Kent, and the Obama State Department, instead, the media narrative that's being pushed is, can you believe Rudy Giuliani was looking into Yovanovitch? That's how bad the Republicans are at this. Yes, he should have been looking at Yovanovitch. So should have Trump. There should be immediate congressional investigations into what George Kent admitted here. Biden should be called in front of Congress and subpoenaed. So should Obama. So should Yovanovitch and Kent. No wonder Kent believes that. He stands to lose big if an investigation shows election interference and it becomes public knowledge. The public that's been told for 3 years, foreign election interference, the worst thing that could happen in this country. If it came out that Obama allies were actively suppressing election interference to help Hillary Clinton's campaign, what do you think the average person would think? The information's out there. But the Republicans are so bad at allowing the Democrats to control the narrative that the average person has no idea. People have been unable to respond to the evidence that John Solomon has provided, so they've attacked his character and said he was lying. When former Ukrainian prosecutor Leshchenko spoke up about Obama's State Department pressuring them to drop investigations into Obama-connected people, which Kent admitted happened, he was said to have recanted. I argued for months about this. Oh, Solomon's corrupt. He interviewed Leshchenko, and Leshchenko said there was a do not prosecute list, and the New York Times interviewed Leshchenko and said that that's not true. He recanted. But even as the New York Times is forced to admit here a couple months ago, that's not true. As the story of the U.S. Embassy's pressure spread, a new controversy erupted. A Ukrainian news outlet claimed Leshchenko recanted his claim about the do not prosecute list. I called Leshchenko and he denied recanting or changing his story. He gave me this very detailed response, standing by his statements. But American officials and news media, eager to discredit my reporting, piled on, many quoting the Ukrainian outlet without ever contacting Leshchenko to see if it was true. One of the American outlets that did contact Leshchenko, the New York Times, belatedly disclosed today that Leshchenko told it, like he told me, that he stood by his allegation that the ambassador had provided him with names of people and groups she did not want targeted by prosecutors. It is neither conspiracy theory nor a debunked or retracted story. U.S. Embassy officials did apply pressure to stop Ukrainian prosecutors. Period. Proven. And the media lied to you over and over again and said, don't trust John Solomon, Leshchenko recanted. That was a lie. Here's the New York Times piece showing it. In an interview with the New York Times last month, Mr. Leshchenko blamed the confusion on an interpreter who handled his interview with The Hill. In other words, what Leshchenko said is he doesn't know colloquialisms in the United States. So, like, a list of names, right? A do not prosecute list. He's like, oh, I didn't mean she actually had a piece of paper with names on it and was like this name, like a list. She just told me names. A colloquialism is we'd say she said a list of names. So when he was talked to in Ukraine, they're like, do you have that list? And he was like, oh, no, there wasn't a physical list. There was just a verbal list. So he said, he's saying in an interview, he blamed the confusion on his interpreter. He insisted that the ambassador, Yovanovitch, had in fact asked him not to target certain politicians and activists who worked with the embassy in its anti-corruption efforts. In other words, who worked with the Obama administration. So in conclusion, Kent is a biased witness who is lying when he says he doesn't know of evidence Ukraine interfered in the election. He admits the state pressured Ukrainian prosecutors to drop investigations of Soros-Obama-funded organizations, and admits that they applied pressure to prosecutors to drop investigations of Ukrainian election interference to help Hillary. This is further proof that there needs to be an investigation into Biden and Obama for having meddling into investigations in the Ukraine that could harm them or harm the Democrats, and proof that Trump was right to pursue that investigation. That's the defense of Donald Trump. That shows the Ukrainian election interference. It shows the corruption of the Bidens. It shows the corruption of Obama. It shows the corruption of the very witnesses against Trump. Yeah, good night, anyone who's leaving. I'll probably stay on till 1 and then be heading out. But, so I got some fun stuff coming up. But yeah, that's what's going on with impeachment. So let me just tie a neat bow on this for tonight. What's going on? All of this stuff today in the trial was just about the process of how we're going to do it. The Republican defense of it's going to be better in the Senate, I think, than it was in the House. Not that everyone in the House did a poor job, but they have still yet to make the best arguments, the arguments that I'm making here. Did you know that? I mean, honestly, I know some of you have been with me for a while. How many of you knew that George Kent admitted in testimony that the State Department, including himself and Yovanovitch, pressured the Ukraine to drop investigations into the people interfering in the 2016 election? Like, Night, Lori. Like, can anyone tell me if they'd heard that? And if you haven't, and you're the type of person that's up on a Tuesday night watching some schlub like me talk about impeachment, what do you think the average American who's not watching me has heard about it? Or not watching some version of me, someone else on YouTube? Don't you think that's material? The Republicans have let this become a question of, was there a quid pro quo? That's the way the narrative has been formed. If the Democrats can prove there was a quid pro quo, it will be spun that this is proof that Trump abused power. This is proof that he should be... I do say it all the time, John. But it's amazing to me that this isn't... Why isn't this discussed everywhere? There's certain things that come across that are just so easy that are never talked about. Like, I've said this on every Virginia video I did. Democrat whip Clyburn admits to MSNBC, if we had a vote in the Bill of Rights today, the Democrats would vote against it. That's a bombshell. How wasn't this mainstream news everywhere? Every single person that's concerned about the Constitution should have been like, wait, what? This isn't some low-level Democrat? Yeah, I don't hear anyone ever talking about it. It's the same with this Ukraine stuff. It blows my mind. Even if you don't want to, even if you can give two craps less about Trump and impeachment, and you're just like, whatever, it's all stupid. The fact that you were told every day for 3 years, the head story on the media, every day, the head story from the Democrats, every day, from the intel agencies, every day was Russia interfering, Russia interfering, Russia interfering, Russia interfering. It's an act of war, foreign interference, takes away our elections. We don't have democracy. Russian interference, gotta stop the interference, gotta censor people online, gotta stop Russian interference, foreign interference, foreign interference, foreign interference. Over and over and over and over and over and over. Every day, that was beaten to your head every day. It's terrible, it's bad, it's ruining our country. And then you have Ukraine admitting, yeah, we interfered. Of course we did. We interfered to help the other side. And all of a sudden, not only is the media and all the people that have shouted about foreign election interference for 3 years, not only are they silent on it, but they actually have the gall to say, if you investigate that election interference, that's a crime, that's impeachable. It's a conspiracy theory, it's all been debunked, even though they publicly admitted it in the mainstream media. And even more than that, the actual people testifying against Trump have admitted under oath that they pressured Ukraine themselves to stop the investigation into election interference. That's corruption of the highest magnitude. That shatters their entire narrative. Yeah, and they can't prove the quid pro quo. And that's another point, John, you've listened to me for a while. That's another point I make all the time. If I concede every single argument that the Democrats made, every single witness, if I concede everything they said, all that does is gets us to the point where we already know we're at with George Kent and with Obama and Biden. That Trump issued a quid pro quo. Okay, the next step is, was it legitimate for him to issue it? Now, I know the Democrats and the media will just say, of course not, Orange Man bad. And of course it was okay for Obama and Biden because they're good. But if you're trying to be objective, you realize that's garbage. So on one hand, we have two instances of quid pro quo, one with Obama and Biden and one with the State Department under them at George Kent, admitting to quid pro quos to bury investigations of their own possible corruption. That's admitted by both of them. On the other hand, we have Trump, who we have no idea if there was a quid pro quo. There's no admission. There's no evidence. The only witness that specifically spoke to Trump said he specifically said no quid pro quo. And that was just to investigate possible corruption, not bury corruption. Yet one's impeachable and the other's perfectly fine, and you're a terrible conspiracy theorist if you talk about. Even though it's admitted, even though it's a worse crime. And another point that I don't hear people make. If Trump really, okay, so the argument is Trump wanted to do this to go after Joe Biden because he's so threatened by Joe Biden. Have you seen Joe Biden? If I was Trump, I'd be chomping at the bit to run against Joe Biden. I think pretty much anyone else in the field stands a better chance than Biden. If we get real technical and talk about it, I could talk about how the progressive wing's going to backlash if someone like Biden's elected. There's not going to be enough drive to get people like that out there. Biden's going to stumble and falter and gaffe all the way up until the election. But let's assume that's true, that Trump was fearful of Joe Biden. And let's assume it's true. Remember, when Trump issued this, if you're going to break the law, if you're going to abuse power and do something that's impeachable, would you do it in front of a room full of people? Trump has every right to say, all right, everyone out of the office. Just me and my translator. But instead, he did it in the same process he does any of these other calls. And furthermore, and this is the key point that I haven't heard anyone but me make, if this was about winning the 2020 election and he was fearful of Biden, why in God's name wouldn't he wait to call Zelensky and ask for this until Biden won the nomination? Why would you, with someone so gaffe prone, such a weak candidate like Joe Biden, why would you, in a room full of people, do something you knew could jeopardize your presidency, that would lead to this huge investigation, when you have no clue if Biden will even be the nominee? I'd bet money against Biden being the nominee. But Trump took this huge chance in front of everyone before Biden was even the nominee to go after someone who probably won't even be running by the time the primary's done. All he had to do was say, hey, let's just wait until the primary's over and then we'll start getting dirt on whoever wins the primary. That's all he had to do. If it's Biden, I'll call the Ukraine. See what I could do. If that's what this was truly about, why wouldn't he have done that? Why take this huge chance? Hi, what's up, Sassy Friends? Thanks for being here. Yeah, Bill, I agree with you. Now, let me briefly talk a little about myself. Yes, I think I'm a good debater. Yes, I think I'm skilled in being able to look into this stuff. But I'm also lucky. I have time to be able to do it, and I have an interest in it and an energy for it. Do you know what my connections are? Do you think I'm a wealthy person? I'm not a wealthy person. If my wife was still on here, she could tell you. Do you think I have connections? I have connections to no one at all. Not even local government people. Why can I find this information out? But the people that we have representing us, that are paid healthily, that have all these connections, they're clueless. They can't come up with this stuff. Yeah, and I agree with you totally, John. And Modus, you're absolutely right. Modus makes the point, it doesn't matter if we have the truth, because the Democrats and the establishment, I would say, have all of the cultural institutions of power. This is why I say this over and over again. I know people get tired of a lot of this stuff I say, probably repeating. Do you understand the importance of this now? They control the mainstream media. They control academia. They control Silicon Valley. They control the entertainment industry. They understood getting power, right? What did Andrew Breitbart always say? Politics is downstream of culture. They understood if they win the culture war, if they get into academia and get to kids when they're young, if they get into the entertainment industry, if they could control Silicon Valley, if they could control the media, then they don't have to win the political power. They could stymie Trump even if all Republicans win, because the Republicans are either gutless or they're inept and they don't know how to properly defend against this garbage. I tell Republicans all the time at meeting I am, and here in Royal, Pennsylvania, Trump's got it in the bag in 2020. Trump's going to crush. And I'm like, you know who you sound like? You sound like a Hillary supporter. That's what her team was talking about. Never underestimate the power that controlling the narrative comes with. Never underestimate it. These people, the establishment, a report came out from an IG that they wanted, Horowitz, that showed that the FBI 17 times acted in a corrupt way, including directly fabricating evidence to say the opposite of what it said, to take unverified Kremlin-sourced info to spy on the President of the United States. And the media and the establishment celebrated that as a victory. That's all you need to know about how inept the Republicans are. James Comey laughed at you. He laughed at the country. Baker, who was high up at the FBI, demanded apologies. After a scathing report imbuking the FBI, they celebrated. That's how far behind the 8 ball the Republican Party is. Thanks, Killer Kyle. Appreciate it. Recommend me to people. Like and subscribe. All that good stuff. So, now before I go, I've been all this time on impeachment. I promised to talk about Covington. If you all don't mind, let me put off Covington until maybe later in the week. Maybe I'll do a special live stream just on Covington. But suffice it to say, it's almost exactly the 1-year anniversary of the Covington crap. For me, I would love to write a book called From Covington to Kavanaugh. Those two situations, the Covington situation and the Kavanaugh situation, were what showed to me that I do not know how in good conscience you could vote for this Democrat Party. And if you're new to me, let me just make this real clear. I will always be a country first person over party or over individual. In other words, if I think that the party that I'm with, the Republicans, or if I think the president I support, Trump, does something I don't like, I'll call him out. I do it all the time. I've been ranting about a lot of Republicans on this video tonight, right? Like, that's who I am. I also understand that we don't want just one monolithic party. We need at least 2, maybe even more, robust parties. Preferably that all care about people. Now, I'm not going to vote for the Democratic Party, but I understand the need for a Democratic Party that actually looks out for people. I get that. We can have healthy disagreements on what policy should be. I just want parties that actually care about the people. I would vote for someone whose policies I disagree with, who I thought actually cared about people that they represented, versus someone who gave lip service and said, yeah, I agree with all your policies, Rob, but I know it's just a corporate shill or an establishment shill that doesn't give 2 hoots about normal America. Now, the reason I bring this up is that I understand that we need to be able to criticize both sides, okay? But we need to, there's going to be more than one party. But when I saw the Democrat, my friends that wanted to vote Democrat previous to this, I said, okay, we disagree. I don't know in good conscience how after Covington they could vote Democrat. You used to talk like hyperbolic similes or metaphors, right? You'd say, oh, social justice warrior. If you're okay with this, if identity politics is something you're focused on, it could lead to, and then insert ridiculous situation. And they'd say, oh no, it would never lead to that. That's what they say, right? I don't know a more ridiculous and crazy hypothetical situation you could even come up with than the Covington thing. The media literally took out of context footage. And by the way, they kept running this story well after they knew it was out of context. They literally took out of context footage to smear children and defend adult racists. That's what the media did. You can't make that up. If I told you 5 years ago, we will have a story, it will be national news for days, where children are attacked by adult racists screaming vile things at them, where another scumbag adult will start banging a drum in their face and lie about it and say that he had to defend the adult racists because they were making harmful but difficult truths. Imagine that. Nathan Phillips, the keeper of the sacred pipe, this Native American. Imagine that you're just standing around and you see a bunch of neo-Nazi skinheads yelling at a bunch of black kids, calling them a bunch of racist names. Do you think you'd be like, you know what? Those kids look pretty aggressive. I better defend those neo-Nazis. But that's what Nathan Phillips did, but it was okay because the skin colors were all right. That's your future. You can't even make up a more ridiculous story. That's what the social justice people want. That's what the establishment Democrat Party's about. You literally could be an adult racist attacking children as long as your skin color's right and their skin color's right. Perfectly fine. Not people like me, not small-time independent content creators saying this. Democratic politicians, mass media people. And then, once it came out that they lied, that they were wrong, that they smeared these kids, they apologized. Remember this? It was like, oh, we apologize. And everyone said, well, maybe the media learned a lesson. And I said immediately, go back and watch my videos on it. I said, what lesson did they learn? As soon as, this is literally how they apologize. Literally, this is the type of stuff going on. Oh, yeah, now that we see the full footage of what went on, maybe it was more difficult than it seemed. But we found footage from 6 years ago at a basketball game at Covington High where a kid painted himself all black, and that's blackface, and that's terrible. That's not the actions of a media that's contrite. Bringing up incidents before these kids were even at the school. Claiming that someone painting themselves black in a blackout game is the same as blackface. Continuing to try to smear these kids that you just ruined their lives. That was Covington. That's a moment that every Republican, and not even Republican, every anti-establishment person, you might be a left-winger. That's fine too. That should scare the crap out of you. If it's this bad now, if these people get total power, what do you think things are going to look like in 20 years? We can see the extension of this. You want to see where we're going? You want to see? I know I got in trouble for talking about this the other day. Someone didn't like this. Thank you, Benny. Thank you, Gail. Furthermore, thanks for being here. John, sorry, I know, Killer Kyle, same to you. And John, as always. I know I'm bad at reading. I'll read the chat a little before I leave. I'll stay up till 1:15 tonight. What the hey? And I'll do a little just with the chat. So I'm sorry I get on a roll. But that should enrage every single one of us, like you say. Furthermore. Modus, you're still here. Thank you, man. And we should remind that. The same with the Kavanaugh situation. The cornerstone of our country is the idea of personal liberty and freedom. The legal representation of that, it comes from British common law, which was the idea of innocent until proven guilty. Why is innocent until proven guilty? Why is that the cornerstone of our legal system? How does that have to do with personal liberty? I say this all the time. The United States was the greatest country in the history of the world because it was founded on the idea of the individual, not of us as a collective. It was, you could be great as an individual. And if we have a country of a bunch of great individuals and a limited government, that will make a great country. Not a government telling all those individuals, you have to work as a collective to do this. That backfires. And so the legal system ramification of that is innocent until proven guilty. Because one of the founding fathers said this, that you would rather have 1,000 guilty men go free than one innocent man jail. And that's true. And yes, there are repercussions of that. But that is the way we should hold ourselves to account. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt. You are innocent until they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you're criminally guilty. Now, yes, the Kavanaugh situation wasn't a court of law, but they were making the implication that it would be that way everywhere. The mainstream Democrats, the Kamala Harris, the Dianne Feinstein, the Cory Bookers, all the people that I watched in that Kavanaugh hearing from the Senate sitting there, literally made the argument. Two arguments that should scare the crap out of you. One, he is guilty until proven innocent. And second, the truth doesn't matter. It's her truth that matters. That's postmodernist crap that should scare every one of you. If that's how we're going to govern, then our country is literally just the oppression Olympics. Innuendo and rumor is all that matters. You no longer have to come up with policies. If you want public office, all you need to do is have more accusations against your opponent than they have against you. Lives can be shattered. And by the way, this isn't just it's just men that are getting their comeuppance. One, that's not true. You'll start to see this used against women as well. And second, I don't know if you knew this. I love, these freaking feminists that think that they're so, who cares about men? I know plenty of women in my life. You don't think it would be harmful to them if the women in my life, if I was falsely smeared and accused of something like that? You don't think that wives and daughters of Kavanaugh went through hell over that? But those women don't matter, right? Or how about we later found out that, what's her name? Blasey Ford's witness that was there with her not only said that this didn't happen, but then was threatened by Blasey Ford's team. That woman didn't matter, did she? Covington to Kavanaugh. Remember that. Tell all your friends. That's what the Democratic Party... You heard any of the Dems running disavow that? Did you hear Bernie disavow that? Did you hear Biden? Did you hear Elizabeth Warren? Amy Klobuchar? They were all for it. They were on the bandwagon. Just like they're all for the FBI corruption. Heard any of the Democratic candidates condemn that? Nope, no problem. Yeah, John, I will make us a Discord. I'm on one with my buddy Drone Tech right now, but I'll make one just for us. That's cool. I'll try to have that up by at least Thursday. Here. Did you ever see that SNL skit with Tim Meadows? It's such a lame little skit, but it was called Perspectives. And the joke was like, he was this 4 a.m. public access show about like black issues. What was his name? Lionel Osborne. He'd be like, it's 4:52 in the a.m. You're watching Perspectives. I'm your host, Lionel Osborne. Today we're here talking about, and then the joke was then like the next minute he'd be like, it's 4:53 in the a.m. Sometimes I feel like that. Let's see. They need to put creepy Joe Biden's son and Nancy Pelosi's son at the Rhino Mitt Romney's son on trial for all the money. Yeah, I agree. Again, why are we about the foreign regime change war stuff? Yeah, the getting into all these countries and all the stuff that's going on. Yes, it is about globalism. It is about eroding national borders. But it's also about increasing the personal wealth of the people that are voting for it. Over and over we see it's hard to wash money. It's hard to just take money from lobbyists in this country and put it right into your pocket. You need to have a more complicated system, like the Clinton Foundation. That's a good way to do it. Or here's another good way. You vote to send money to the Ukrainian energy industry. Then the Ukrainian energy industry hires your family member and pays them hundreds of thousands of dollars for work that they have no competency to do. Now, take that model in Ukraine and apply it to bigger countries like China and all over the world. That's the kind of crap we have going on. I did a video about this the other day, about how we should be outraged. We have homeless people in this country. We have veterans that don't have health care. We have an opioid crisis. We have suicide epidemics. We have all sorts of problems with people in inner cities, like the economics of that. All tons of people in Flint, Michigan that don't have good water to drink. And we're wasting money on this crap to enrich our politicians? And then we're shocked when it turns out that Nancy Pelosi makes $200,000 a year, but somehow she's accumulated hundreds of millions of dollars. Even if she never spent a penny making this money that she makes in Congress, she wouldn't have near the money she's accumulated. Where's the money come from? Well, that's our tax dollars at work. As things in our country fall apart, that's what you see happening. It personally enriches them. It has the added benefit of making the globalists very happy by further eroding the middle class. Modus. So, yeah. But I'll talk more about Covington some other time. I do want to get to this story because it's fun. And it fits in with the Kavanaugh stuff, believe it or not. So, these identity politics, cultural Marxists, whatever you want to call them, the radical feminists are a part of that. And they're hypocrites. They're disgusting. They put all sorts of, they assume your intent is always the worst possible. So, if you say something like, hey, you look good today, that's sexist. Hey, where are you from? That's racist, because maybe they're from a different country. They assume the worst motivations. Why? Because that's the motivations they themselves hold. So how many times have you heard over and over? I remember, it's so ridiculous. I'll just take you to a ridiculous extension. The way that Donald Trump shook the hand of Hillary Clinton was sexist. The way he lorded over her at the debate was sexist. You can't insult women. Blah, 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 blah. Women in politics. Oh my God, to make these sexist claims against women. Oh my God, it's so terrible. You can't, insulting a woman's looks. Oh, it's so terrible. That's the feminist crowd, right? That's their argument. That's the establishment Democrat argument. So, I bring you this gem from Twitter today. I don't know if you saw this. Now, I don't know who Pam Keith is, but she's got a blue check mark. But I just want you to check out this thread, just for a minute. Now, Pam Keith's on the right here. And this is what she says. She says, can you believe Kellyanne's 53 today? I turned 51 in November, and I'm not even wearing a drop of makeup. Oh, she looks good, doesn't she? Making fun of Kelly. She looks better than Kelly, she thinks. I happen to disagree, but whatever. Your personal preference is your personal preference. How petty is this? Now, the same group of people, can you imagine if Donald Trump would do something like this? Can you imagine the same woman, if he would have said like, oh, here's Melania versus Hillary Clinton, this same woman, hundreds of women, all the Women's March rally attenders, they'd be like, that's sexist, that's terrible. But it's not just this one. You're like, whatever, one blue check mark. Let's go down. I'm 71. And I look at least as good as the alternative facts troll in the White House. I'm 61. She's a hot mess. I'm normally against shaming anyone for their appearance. In this instance, though, I think it's appropriate to point out how living a life of lies and hate takes a toll on the body. This is me in my bed. No makeup after 16-hour shift. I just turned 50. I'm 56 and wear almost no makeup. Shows that hate and lies age you. "54, but I don't lie for a living." An entire thread of this. Here we go. "I turned 71 January 8th. Untouches, blah, blah, blah." An entire thread of catty Democrat women that will call themselves Women's March rally attenders, that'll shout about Trump's misogyny, saying, "Oh, I look better than you. It must be because you lie. Yo, you look bad, girl." Isn't this, am I the only one who finds this hilarious? You see this crap all the time. So we got a thread of just old ladies being like, "Nah, I'm better looking than you because I'm a Democrat." The same people that would say any little thing you do is sexist. Oh my God. They have no self-relevance. Or I'm sorry, self-reflection whatsoever. None. None at all. And just subjectively, I didn't see anyone there that I was like, "Wow, yeah, you're stunning." Hey, listen, you will never see me begrudge. As long as you're consenting adults, fine by me. Everybody has different tastes. So I'm not going to sit here and shame these women and be like, "Oh, they're ugly." That's not something I do. But I'm saying no one was a supermodel there, you know? No one had a perfect body, but they're, well, Kellyanne lies, so she looks terrible. Does Kelly look that terrible? I didn't think so, regardless of what you think of her. It just goes to show the hypocrisy, and you see this over and over again. They constantly do this. This is what cultural Marxism is about. This is what identity politics is about. You are not a person, you're just a set of categories, most of which you have no control over. So you break yourself up into categories. I'm not Rob Noir. I am white. I am male. I'm fat. Was born in the United States, right? All of that stuff. I'm able-bodied. All of the least interesting stuff about it. I don't care about any of that stuff about 99% of the people. I don't care. Oh, what's your sexual preference? I don't care. Oh, what's your, race? I don't care. What's your age? Probably don't care. Your gender? Probably don't care. What's your thoughts? What's your actions? Tell me a funny story. Tell me interesting things about you. If you ask someone like, "Oh, tell me about yourself," and they're like, "I'm a Scorpio," you're probably like, "Yeah, okay. I really don't care." That's how I feel when you're like, "Well, I'm white." Okay, whatever. To each their own, I guess. But that's what these people want to do. And then they say, if some of those groups are oppressors and some are the oppressed. And what do I say all the time? So, men are oppressors, women are oppressed. White's oppressor, other colors oppressed. But the caveat is this. In order to get those oppression victimhood points that are the biggest currency in the world right now, at least in the United States, guess what? In places where they're struggling to eat, they don't really give a shit about the victimhood points. But here, with first world problems, victimhood points, that's great currency. That's better than money in your pocket. What do I say all the time? The only way you can cash those points in, though, it don't matter if you're all oppressed groups, right? You could be black, you could be Muslim, you could be gay, you could be transgender, you could be disabled. But the only way you get to collect all those great victim points is if you agree with them. If you play the identity politics game. If you're black and you're Muslim and you're transgender and you're disabled and you say, "Yeah, but I don't buy into this identity politics crap," they will come after you with more hatred than they would ever come after me with. Because you prove their entire world narrative incorrect. That's why Kanye West gets it so bad. That's why Candace Owens gets it so bad. That's why Kellyanne Conway gets it so bad. That's what that's about. They'll go after Kellyanne's looks before they go after mine, and probably Kellyanne's better looking than me. Why? Because you can't have a woman leaving the plantation. You can't have a woman free thinking. Get back in line. You're not an individual. You're this oppressed group. And if you refuse to accept that identity of your entire life's based on your oppression, then you're the biggest threat to those people. That's what this illustrated to me in a funny way. Okay, John, I'll make that promise. 1,000 subs, oily, no shirt revealed. I warn you, you'll see a lot of shoulder and chest hair, but so yeah, that's the show for tonight. Let's go through some chats. Anyone have any fun stuff to say in the chat? Did I miss any like great comments? Anyone disagreeing with me? So one of the things I think's funny is I was getting a lot of views talking about the Virginia stuff. I think a lot of people came from like American Joe's show and stuff like that, and that's their big issue. And that's certainly an issue that I'm huge on as well, the Second Amendment. So the impeachment stuff's harder for people to wrap their head around. And in many ways, you're right. The Second Amendment stuff's a direct attack on our rights. And it's just easier to get fired up about. But I implore you, please, to me, the biggest issue, and it goes even beyond that the Second Amendment's a great thing. Like, again, I'm totally with everyone that was there in Virginia. I think I did great work on it. But I still argue that that's almost tertiary, because even though the Second Amendment's important to protect all of our rights, if we have unelected bureaucrats that are stealing the elections and are engaged in all this corruption, then even if the Second Amendment's a big issue for you and you vote for people that you want to be pro-Second Amendment, this establishment will use propaganda. They'll use every tool in their box to make sure that your vote doesn't matter and that those protections are continued to erode. This impeachment is an example of a coup that is being engaged against Trump. Now, you might say, but I don't like all the actions Trump's made on the Second Amendment. And I agree. And again, I will tell you, you could come to this channel for me to complain about things about Trump. I certainly will. I have in the past. I will in the future. But we have to, even if you're on the left, you have to defend. You have to understand fighting this corruption is the first thing that we have to do. Now, you could make the argument, yeah, but in order to fight that corruption, Second Amendment rights, so it is cyclical. I get that. But I do think that this type of stuff's important. The impeachment stuff, the Russia hoax, the FBI corruption, and things like that. I think all of this stuff's very important. So, let's see. Yeah, Bill. Bill. You know, I was being a little generous to myself, Bill, saying probably Kellyanne's cuter than me. Yeah, American Joe's great. You know, I haven't had a chance to talk to him since the Virginia thing, but, you know, I actually saw more of Doug Ducote's live stream than American Joe's, just because technical issues, I guess. But one of the things, you know, I thought that they were absolutely right in almost total agreements with me on the need to try to step away from political violence, the need to talk to people that traditionally might come from different camps. Like, for example, there were supposedly this was just rural white people concerned about Second Amendment rights. I saw a lot of black people there that understood that the government's traditionally tried to come from their right to defend themselves as well. So I thought that American Joe and Doug and the Patriot Hour, they all did a great job reaching out. They all did a great job of being great ambassadors and defending our rights and showing that, you know, real independent content creators get out there in the street, you know, and, you know, getting our message out there. So I thought they did great. Thanks, Bill. I hope you appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. Killer Kyle, thanks also for being here. Yeah. And I'm going to keep doing every Monday. American Joe's going to do a Patriot Super Panel. I don't know if it'll always be on his channel, but he's going to have 6 people at a time on there. So they're going to rotate in and out. I'm not on this Monday, but I will be on the next Monday. So, yeah, you guys can keep checking me out there. Yeah, the impeachment trial's still going. Yeah, sad news for them. I'll be in bed. So, no impeachment trial going on for this guy. I got work tomorrow, so yeah, just the last thing I'll say, yeah, take it easy, Modus. Thank you. Just the last thing I'll say before I just get to my normal wrap up here is, I do think that you have to understand, and you know, I know that this is a tough subject for some people because they think maybe it borders on, what's the word I'm looking for? Going too hard after our own side. I would bet a lot of people watching me probably come from areas that are like what I consider normal America. That's why I wanted to name my show something about the people that I represent. I'm not good working with my hands and stuff like that. Those are the people I respect most in life. The veterans, the welders, the farmers, the truck drivers. But that doesn't mean if you're in a white collar job, I don't respect you. We all have important skill. We all have important contributions we can make. It's just about being a decent person. It's about advocating for our liberty, our rights, and things like that. Being that type of stuff. Or just being fun or funny or entertaining or good to be around. Like, all that stuff's good. Anyways, not the, just the DC crowd or the Hollywood crowd. Screw those people, I'll still work with them. I'd still talk with them. But everything's geared towards them, and I'm tired of it. One of the things that's difficult is to tell people like that, you're probably come from a background similar to me in some ways. We got to hold these Republicans' feet to the fire. We do. Just because maybe you voted for them and maybe you like a lot of what they do. I ask myself in my district, I've met my representative. I think he seems like a really nice guy. We agree on most policy issues. What has he done against this coup against Trump? What has he done against the Russia hoax? What has he done against the FBI corruption that we saw? What has he done? Nothing. Hardly anything. Ask yourself that too. What has your representative done? Can you think of a more important cause than they're trying to overthrow the duly elected president of the United States based on garbage? They're trying to cover up crimes that I've outlined, just a fraction of which on this video tonight. What is your representative? Don't just be, the Republicans won, therefore we're good. That's not what it's about. Make them keep their promises. Make them show an interest in defending this president. Even if they disagree with him on some things. It's higher than just Donald Trump. I've said it from the get-go. If Trump committed crimes, he should be held accountable for them. But we can see that's not what this is. I outlined for you exactly what this is. It is the Democrats and the establishment trying to criminalize looking into their corruption. That's what's going on. So I'm not going to keep going back into that, but I'm just telling you, look at what your congressperson's doing. I'm not happy with mine, so I'm running against them in 2022. And I'm here to tell you, I'm not going to make a lot of friends doing it. There will probably be a lot of people in the establishment Republican Party that think that I need to wait my turn, that I don't have a name, that I don't know the right people, that I haven't paid my dues. That's fine. I don't care. I'm not running because I want a job. I'm running because I see what's happening to the country. I see the corruption at the highest levels at the FBI, at the Obama administration. And even with Trump, we're nowhere closer to any of those people being held accountable and facing justice and going to prison like they deserve. So that's what I'm going to run on. I would run on disbanding the FBI immediately. Now, you don't have to be that extreme. And if my congressperson would take significant steps into defending Trump and calling out this criticism, then maybe I wouldn't run. Because I'm not running because I feel entitled for a job. But instead, I see the exact opposite. I think a lot of people that are Republicans are just trying to stay on the fence. It's like, we don't know the way things are going. We don't want to take the chance of defending Trump, and then, public perception goes against Trump. So we're just going to do the bare minimum. And I'm sorry, I don't accept that. So that's my advice to you. Consider running for office. Consider writing to your representative. Consider, you don't have to be rude. We each have our own style. Do it how you want. But let them know. This is an important issue. What are you doing? Just talking about it? Just sending out newsletters? Why aren't you in front of the cameras right now? Why aren't you talking about this actual corruption that we saw from the Obama and Bidens and people like George Kent? Why do you have to listen to me, some chubby guy sitting on a chair somewhere, instead of your congressperson? They get paid to be there. Who am I? I don't have these connections. I work 78 hours a week. Why am I on this and not them? It's ridiculous. That's all I'm saying. So, yeah, more should run for office, Sassy Frets. I totally agree. Yeah, Bill, people just want to hear the truth. That's exactly right. That's why I truly recommend, if you're capable of running for it. Look, it cost me a ton of money. I refused to accept one donation in the special election. Cost me thousands of dollars. I'm still paying off credit cards, But I felt like I had people tell me all the time, like, well, Rob, you talk about it online, but what do you do? Talking about it is important, and getting the information out there, that is the majority of the battle. But I was like, you're right, I could do more. So I tried to run for office. I lost. Came 9th out of 24. That's not too shabby. But I'm not going to be dissuaded. I'll do it again. More people should start channels. More people, do what you can, Even if you're not a talker, if you're not someone comfortable with running, support someone. Help people in your community. Show through, your charitable nature. You're helping in the community or whatever. Whatever you could do. We all have different skill sets. That's totally fine. So that's my advice. So, yeah, I think that the Republicans have been weak. I'm going to be honest about it. And yeah, I'll still vote majoritarily Republican. I certainly won't vote for anyone in the Democratic Party. But that doesn't mean I have to accept, the incompetence or the ineptitude. So, all right. Well, John, okay. And yeah, I would lose a lot of votes saying disband the FBI, but I would push for that. I certainly would. Absolutely. It needs to be torn down from the ground up. Start a new investigative agency. Everyone there needs to be removed. And the other thing is, John, I'm not like AOC. I don't think that I could just come in by fiat and demand the FBI be removed. I know that you have to be pragmatic and understand that you're never going to get the votes for that. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't push for it. I would push that we should have those votes. That's how serious it is. And people, at the very least, should put forth bills to basically the top 15% of leadership in the FBI needs to be removed immediately, even if there's no evidence of ineptitude or corruption. Because the lack of trust in the FBI is so severe at this point, the corruption is so deep, that we have no choice but to take some drastic measure. So that's where I'm at. So last thing I'll say is, please consider subscribing if you haven't. If you, look, on the kind of the note I was just talking about to John, please disagree with me if you want. Please consider, my email's now on my channel. It's just rob.nor@gmail.com. Email me. I talked to some people today via email that gave me some good information. So yeah, please get in touch with me. So consider liking and subscribing. Recommend me some other people in my description. If you'd like to follow me on Patreon or PayPal, I'd really appreciate it. The more I get, that money's going to go directly into the channel through hardware, software, and the more money I would get from that eventually, which I'm years away, but if I would get that successful where I could do this show full time, I think I do a pretty damn good job of putting content out as it is. I really do. Like, I have fun doing this, so I'm no hero, don't get me wrong. But I do put a lot of work into this. I mean, my content, I'm trying to average a video a day, plus I'm doing 2-hour live streams and things like that, and I'm working 70, 80 hours a week. So, if I got to that level where I could work less and do the channel more, that would be fantastic. But if you can't send money, no problem. Consider following me on BitChute and Twitter. Just a couple programming notes. Like I said, my live streams are normally going to be Tuesday nights at 11 p.m. Eastern, Fridays at noon Eastern. I might have live streams scheduled throughout, but those are the two I'm going to hit every week. Trying to average a video a day. And then Mondays, check out American Joe's show, wherever they do that Patriot panel, and I'll be on there some Mondays as well. I ran in a special election in District 12 in Pennsylvania. It was Tom Marino's seat. Tom Marino got ill after he won in 2018 and had to immediately resign, and so there had to be a special election. Fred Keller is now the representative in that district. He won. Yeah. 15. I'm sorry, District 15. But, so just one other thing. I'm in talks. Possibly this Friday, I'll be doing a debate with someone. That debate topic will be, and what I find to be an unusual one, but it's something I disagree with. Should it be criminalized to advocate socialism? Does free speech not cover endorsing socialism? I think that yes, you should be allowed to endorse socialism and not thrown in jail for it. And the person who wants to debate me, I don't want to give away their position, but I think that's what they're saying. That yeah, John, don't give me beer money for God's sakes. That's far more important. So so look for that debate. And then, the very, very, very last thing I'll touch on is, if you like my new intro card, my buddy Chirby did that for me. He's awesome. He gave me a lot of the audio equipment as well. So, really good shout out to him. Thanks to my Patreon supporters, Milo and Dib. Thanks to my friend Logan that's gave me money. Thanks to everyone that's been mods or helped me in some way and talked with me. I am running in 2022. I don't know what the district will be, though, because they're going to redistrict because Pennsylvania is losing a seat. So I can't tell you exactly what district. But I live in Clarion County. So that's where I'll be running, whatever that district is. Lastly, if you want to be part of the show in ways I talked about, give me suggestions and things like that, that's fine. But if you're someone who maybe you're an artist, you're a photographer, you're a musician, and you would want to help me out by giving me access to some of your material, we could maybe have a mutual relationship where I was thinking of doing just like an outro at the end of any one of my live streams, be like, hey, users, one of my subscribers sent this picture in, check him out on this channel or something like that. I'd be down for that. Music, whatever, so yeah, just something to think about. And also, if you have a channel that you would like me to push, even though I don't have that many followers, I think it's important that independent content creators, even those that disagree with me, stick together, because the biggest thing we could do is show that the mainstream media is garbage and that they don't tell the truth. They bury the truth for the powerful. So thank you so much, everyone, for sticking with me to 120. Oh my God, I went later than I wanted. But I do really appreciate it. And look for me to be doing a video tomorrow. And always check out, I might just do impromptu live streams too. So thanks so much, everyone. Turn off the impeachment crap. It's all crap. Have a good one.